refer to the conclusion of that rally, and then there being shots fired west of Union Station. That's this area near a parking garage. They say several people were struck. At this point, they say there have been 2 armed people detained for further investigation. They're also asking people in the area to exit as quickly and safely as possible and to avoid that parking garage in order to facilitate treatment of shooting victims. The police statement also says that many people who were there have footage of officers securing Union Station. They clarify that they're working to provide safety for everyone inside and around the area.
Kansas City police posted this on X just a few minutes ago. They confirmed that shots had been fired around Union Station. They urged people to leave the area. Again, you see those officers there with guns drawn. We understand that those officers were going into Union Station. We're going to bring you some live pictures, I think, if we have them. Here are some live pictures of the area now. As you can see, the people who had been celebrating the Super Bowl victory of the Kansas City Chiefs there largely cleared out of the area. That event had just wrapped when shots were fired at a nearby parking garage. These are live images that you're looking at right now. We understand that there are some people who were hit. We do not have a firm number on who has been injured, how the extent of any of those injuries. We are following all of that for you. We do know from the police that there are 2 suspects that have been detained at this moment. Again, these are live images coming to you outside of Kansas City, Missouri, where just an hour ago there was jubilation in the streets as people were celebrating Kansas City's win in the Super Bowl. Now, a very different scene there.
Yeah, and it's such a quick turn of events from what was a massive citywide celebration where you would have the Kansas City police stationed everywhere. The incident, based on this early information, appears to have been in a parking garage next to Union Station, and a shooting, according to local police, occurred after the major celebration had ended. So it's unclear who the people of interest are, who the suspects may be, and the extent of the injuries that police say have been felt by several people. Now, we can see reporters for our local affiliate trying to get more information from some of the fans there. As soon as that's available, we'll bring it to you. Perhaps we can listen in this moment and see what perhaps witnesses and people there on the scene heard.
Okay.
Watch out, guys. Get up this car, please. By the boys right here. I fuck with them, but not them.
He's pulling over. He's on the sidewalk. On the sidewalk, he's pulling forward.
Yeah, we were out on the media riser just in front of Union Station, and we heard something similar to what kind of Neil was talking about there with either fireworks or pops. I was actually down on the ground, and Jillian was up on the riser. I looked up at you, Jillian, and you said, get up here right now.
Right. We saw people running out of Union Station on the east side of the doors pretty frantically, and at that moment we were receiving information that we needed to change where we were, so just to gather and then just get to a safe space. So there was information provided quickly, which was nice, but sure, it was a frantic situation, and it is still a little chaotic as people are still finding family members and understanding where is the best, most safe route away.
Yeah, police are still continuing to kind of move us further and further away from Union Station, and like you said, when we were out there, we heard those pops again while we were on the risers, and then some people actually sheltered in place inside Union Station as well. But we're continuing continuing to learn information. Obviously, we're going to see what we can find out from authorities out here as much as we can. But for right now, guys, we'll send it back to you.
All right. Thank you both. Yeah, you're looking live here now. I want to show you more live pictures around Union Station here as a rally scene has quickly turned now into a crime scene, and the evacuation of partygoers has turned into a mass exodus by people literally scared for their lives.
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, here we go. Here are someone else on a stretcher being rushed, presumably to an ambulance or to somewhere where they can receive some first aid. But you're right, Carolyn, this has now, not only is it a crime scene, but it was not too long ago that there were hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people here, and then someone fired a gun, and it created mass panic there. People literally running for their lives, people seeing others drop. We're hearing as many as, this has not been confirmed, but we're hearing from our crews on the ground there that there may be as many as 4 people who need treatment, but an unimaginable incident to happen following what was Kansas City's shining moment. The Kansas City Chiefs celebrating with their hordes of fans what had been a spectacular, unbelievable season, and now it's marred by a tragic incident in which there have been gunshots fired, people have been injured, and everyone has been told to evacuate the area as soon as possible.
And we are hearing from Neil Jones at this point that 2 armed people were taken into custody there on that scene by police. Whether that is the entirety of the people with guns involved, we don't know. And we don't know how active of a scene this is still right now. So obviously still a scare in the air. And so let's go now to Zach and Sharon higher up for us now with a bird's eye view of what is happening. Guys, did you hear anything?
Yeah, no, we did not actually hear it, but we saw it. It was right at the end as we were wrapping up our show. We turned around and we looked at Union Station and the crowd, and all of a sudden we noticed that there was a stream of people running out from Union Station, and we saw the cops running back in, and at that very same moment we heard dozens and dozens and dozens of sirens headed towards the city, and then soon we saw just a string of emergency vehicles pull into the War Memorial here and then turn out and go down, try to get to Pershing in front of Union Station. But Zach has also had the binoculars out, and so he's seen a lot of this activity closer than I have that's been going on. Zach?
Yeah, you know, Sharon, right now we hear police on the loudspeakers telling people, look, the parade is over, you need to clear the scene. If we could, there appears to be there's a number of choppers in the air right now, but what we're seeing from here is the crime scene tape is to the west of Union Station, so it's on the west side. So that may be where this all went down, just as you're entering Union Station near Pershing, where the players were, where the stage is. I'm not seeing any police tape over there. It's just to the west of there, and that's where a lot of police officers are located. And some of those little vehicles carrying those gurneys that Neil mentioned just moments ago, they were stationed over here because, as Sharon mentioned, we heard just a number of ambulances trying to make their way around the memorial to the west side of Union Station, and that's where a number of those ambulances are stationed right now with those smaller vehicles to get people out. But from here, we're not seeing any victims, at least from this vantage point, and maybe they have already been taken to the hospital. But what I am seeing as I look toward the entrance of Union Station there's a good amount of people who are exiting. So you might imagine that those people ran into Union Station, shelter in place, when those shots rang out, and now police are escorting them out. Brad, Carolyn, that's the latest from here.
Zach and Sharon, thank you for your perspective. Please be safe.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, we want to get straight back to KCTV5's Neil Jones. Neil was very near the shooting when gunshots were fired, so we want to go right back to him. He's very near that area right now. Neil?
Well, guys, I'm standing in front of the shooting scene. It happened right over there to the right of that tree there. You can see a wheelchair. It happened in that area there. Imagine this intersection here being filled with hundreds and hundreds of people walking very calmly away from Union Station when suddenly what appeared to be fireworks ended up being gunfire broke out. The police began to run in as people tried to run out. There was screaming. There was crying as people tried to get away, tried to get their families away, and they ended up apprehending someone over there behind that red where the Kansas City Fire Department truck has just stopped. They ended up apprehending somebody, it appeared, right there. They subdued somebody. He had been wounded, it looked like maybe two, and they took him out. Don't know if he was wounded or not. They were treating him, but they definitely took somebody out. There were people who said that was a suspect. No guarantee about that, but that's what we were told at the time. That's what I heard several police officers yell to other police officers, is that we have a suspect. They then began treating people. Photographer Greg Melota says a total of 4 people were treated and 2 were given CPR. 2 were given CPR in front of him. So it all happened right here. It was very frightening, with hundreds of people running in all directions trying to get away from this situation.
All right, Neil, thank you. If you are just joining us right now, we want to kind of catch you up to speed to what has been a breathtaking morning and then ended with a resounding thud. So as soon as the parade or the celebration on the stage ended, people were starting to leave. And then that's when, as our Neil Jones reported, there were shots fired. Some people thought it sounded like fireworks, but it turns out it was shots fired. There have been reports of as many as 4 people who may have needed treatment. Police then immediately ran in and tried to clear the scene, told people to leave immediately. There are reports that 2 people were detained, 2 people who were armed who were detained, but an unbelievable end to what had been a spectacular championship parade now has been marred by a shooting in which at least 4 people may have been hurt and are now receiving treatment for their injuries.
Literally within seconds, the scene of a celebration wrapping up, very successful celebration that's been going on for several hours here, downtown Kansas City and on into Union Station, ending in a scene of sheer panic by people running away from that staging area. And people must have been told to go and shelter in place inside Union Station, because we did just get word that Kansas City, Missouri police have released all those people who were inside Union Station. Presumably, we're wondering now if that means the players and their families as well.
Right, exactly. We'll have to follow up on that. But as Neil Jones reported, it was sheer terror for those people who were around that and had witnessed it and heard the gunfire that some people thought was fireworks, but no, not at all. It turned out to be gunfire. As we continue to look at this very heavy police presence right now just outside of Union Station. All right, we want to get right back down there. Bill and Carolina continue to be there live. Guys, take it away.
Yeah, the amount of law enforcement, the response to this is just incredible. Just from my vantage point here on top of the West End at Crown Center, I can see that Grand is completely blocked off by, I'd say 24 police vehicles. A block over here to Main is completely blocked off with the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department, plus all of those charter buses that a lot of the chiefs and their families were going to go home on, we believe, are still there, completely blocking all that. And then further west down on Pershing, there's another 24 police fire vehicles over there, including 2 ambulances not too far from where Neil Jones is located. They do have the back doors open, so hopefully they're being able to treat whoever was injured by this shooting. But again, just an incredible amount of emergency response vehicles still out here on scene, with police tape going from there's the World Champions banner on the back of the stage that has all the sound gear on it, with going all the way over to the edge of the parking lot on the west side of the Union Station parking lot here in front of it. So just an incredibly awful event to happen after such an incredibly happy morning and afternoon.
And just to put it into perspective too, so we're seeing a lot of police presence, which is what we want to see right now after something like this goes down. But from the fountain at Union Station and into Union Station, there is no crowd, like no fans are there anymore. That's kind of where the scene was happening. And then there's just a few stragglers still out on the lawn. Obviously, we've still got at least a few ambulances out here. Police kind of scattered all throughout that area that I was talking about, from about the fountain to Union Station. And keep in mind, and as a reminder, the whole day we were talking about the fans and the families and the kids. Who are you going to want to see today? Patrick Mahomes. So that's the crowd that was here, was a lot of the families, a lot of the kids. And you can see right now live that we are having somebody taken out on a gurney into one of these ambulances too.
Yes, we have definitely clearly a victim on a stretcher here getting taken away in this ambulance now as well. We're not even sure how many victims we're talking about here. According to Neil Jones, he knows of at least 4 victims that they've seen treated, and this very well could be now a 5th. Added to that number.
And I can just tell you, Kansas City Police just tweeting this out moments ago. They're now saying multiple people were struck by gunfire.
Someone's being carried.
I'm seeing also on Twitter, I'm not going to report the number, but there are now reports of more than 4 people who were injured. So we cannot confirm that, but Kansas City Police now saying there are multiple people who were injured here. So this story keeps getting worse by the moment. Gunfire breaking out right at the end of the championship celebration, and now multiple people have been injured and are being treated.
Specifically, if you were watching this and if you know that area well, this is at the corner there of Kessler and Pershing. As you're looking at the stage, kind of on the southwest corner of that stage seems to be where the shots were fired. And as we've mentioned, only 35 yards or so away from where our Neil Jones was reporting on a joyous occasion. But clearly we're wrapping up Chiefs Super Bowl victory parade in a way that we sure never wanted to, now turning into a scene, a crime scene here that will need plenty of investigating, as it's going to take hours yet for them to figure out what exactly went down here.
Boy, that's right. I think a lot of people are just taking breathing a heavy breath here, a heavy sigh as we watch this unfold. Let's get back out to Shane and Jillian, who are there on the ground. Guys.
Yeah, guys, we're still seeing emergency services coming in. A couple of ambulances, a fire truck just came through here at Kessler and Pershing. And kind of echoing what Carolina was saying earlier, which is it's such a stark contrast between what we saw earlier today, where there were so many smiles, so many people being excited about the day, and just seeing people come out and seeing tears streaming down their faces because of what this event has done and changed the feeling of this day.
Certainly, frantic and chaotic is the best way to describe everything. At this point, as Carolina mentioned, there are not fans sitting and enjoying any type of situation here. Vendors are being asked to leave. We are being pushed back moment by moment as more emergency vehicles are arriving every moment. So we are impressed by the presence of the law enforcement presence here, which is comforting, but at a time that it is quite uncomforting to see faces of fans and children. Tough day here, tough ending to a day.
Absolutely heartbreaking. We had a chance to talk with a couple of people out here who were there when everything went down, and they had been out here since 9 p.m. yesterday, so obviously they were very close to the front and very excited to be here, but you could definitely tell the difference, obviously, in their tone, saying that they initially thought that people were just sort of pushing to get out quickly from the parade, and then immediately they sort of realized that things were not normal, and then heard those gunshots, which they thought were fireworks as well. So we're hearing a lot of the same thing from people, thought they were fireworks, and now that we know they were gunshots. But we're going to continue to gather more information out here, talk with folks, and find out what they saw and what they heard. But for right now, guys, we'll send it back to you.
This has just been an absolutely unbelievable afternoon. So, more news to bring you from Kansas City, Missouri police. This is what they just tweeted out. They're saying, remember the child reunification stations in the area at 23rd and Main and inside the main entrance of Union Station. They go on to say, we still have several needing reunification, meaning there are kids who have been separated from their parents and don't know where their parents are. So it says, contact the officer nearest you for reunification information. They also just posted this. We request witnesses to the shooting to please go to the southwest corner of Pershing and Main. And Carolyn, more bad news, not been confirmed, but there are now reports coming out that there are children who were hurt and that there are multiple people who are injured. We don't have a number yet, but they're saying multiple.
Yet. We don't know the severity of injuries yet, but this is obviously very concerning. If you are watching us now here on KCTV5, we're going to bring you back up to speed here on what is happening now in Kansas City, Missouri, in the downtown area right there near Union Station. We're asking you at home, if you know someone who is at that parade, please contact them, ask them to make sure they have their entire party and get away from the area as quickly as they can. If they witnessed anything, though, if you saw what happened, take your testimony over to the southwest corner of Pershing and Main. Police do want to hear from you. If you were witness to anything, that happened there, specifically on the southwest corner of the stage. The rally was just wrapping up. Dancing still happening on the stage at Kessler and Pershing when apparently shots were fired, potentially by more than one person. Reports telling us now that 2 people have been taken into custody.
And the Associated Press is now reporting that 8 to 10 people are now victims in this shooting. 8 to 10 people who are needing treatment. We just saw someone go by on a golf cart there that was needing medical attention. What has turned into such a celebration has now turned into devastation. And parents, I can't even imagine getting separated from your child when you hear shots fired and you see people go down, and then to lose sight of your child. This has turned into a day of horror for some Chiefs fans who all they wanted to do was celebrate the Chiefs championship parade and the Chiefs repeating as Super Bowl champions. And now the area outside of Union Station has turned into a massive crime scene.
Right. And we're still waiting on the numbers of how many people were down there in all for this parade and for the rally. But it had to be, close to 1 million people, we're guessing at this point, but it had to be well over 500,000 at the very least. Neil Jones was right amongst that crowd and not too far from where this happened. He's been our best eyewitness testimony so far as to what exactly transpired there in front of Union Station. Let's go back to Neil now with the latest on what is happening there, what everyone is being told, Neil.
Well, we just saw another person transported by medical personnel on a golf cart. No idea if they were a victim of the shooting or the trample that happened afterwards when people were trying to get away and people fell down. But at any rate, they just took a gentleman away on a golf cart with receiving medical attention. It did not look like he had been shot. The situation is very fluid. They continue to have ambulances here. Some have gotten filled with people and left, and others are staying here, but they're not leaving. Obviously a massive police presence, although there was a very big police presence all day long today as they sat around and stood around and answered questions if people needed it. And immediately they rushed toward the shooters. I couldn't see the shooters because of the wall of people that were coming at me. Again, I was about 35 yards away from when it happened, but police officers from all directions ran that way, and they ended up tackling a couple of people, it appears, but that's the way it looked to me. I didn't see it happen that way. I saw the aftermath of multiple police officers on people, subduing them, and then they were taken away. One looked like he received medical attention, and he was taken away. Whether they are suspects or not, I don't know. But in the aftermath of it, for probably 30 minutes, people have been walking around trying to find their families. I don't see any of those people now, but they were adults. I didn't see any children unattended or crying or anything like that. But people were walking around trying to use their phone. Obviously, the phone wasn't working because everybody was calling at the same moment. But I think people are able to reconnect because the phone service is back up. But there were people angry people coming over and yelling at our photographer. A guy tried to pull his camera off his shoulder, and when I went over and confronted him and said, hey, you don't need to do that, he shoved me down. Man came up and said, hey, we'll arrest him. And I said, no, I'm not interested in that. But it was a very, very emotional situation for a number of people. And there are people over here now that are just so angry and frustrated that this happened, because everybody understands what this means. Forget what happened up on stage. Forget all of the fun and the great emotion, positive emotion. What's going to go out is going to be that it's a shooting, another shooting, and it's going to be perhaps, I hope not, but it's perhaps going to be a black eye for our community, because that's going to be the headline around the world. 700,000 people or whatever it was, and there was a shooting at the end of it. And I don't know who was injured. All I can say is this: I'm glad it was not as bad as it could have been. I mean, this was a situation with all those people packed in, and it sounded like a string of fireworks going off. I don't know enough about guns to know if that's an automatic or a semi-automatic weapon, but a lot of bullets looked like they were fired, and as we saw, there were a number of people hurt.
So stay on that thought just for a moment, Neil. You said it sounded like a string of fireworks. If you were to, are you talking 10, 15, 20 shots, something like that? Or
I think so, and my photographer's agreeing with me. I'd say it was like that, a string of maybe 20 fireworks, and it went off over a period of a few seconds, and it happened right there. I was standing right here, and the gunfire happened on the other side of that red fire truck, and hundreds and hundreds of people came running at me, and it was crowded where I was, so they had nowhere to go. It was utter terror, and when you consider, and I keep going back to this, when you consider that you had so many families here with strollers and toddlers and 5-year-olds and 7-year-olds and 8-year-olds, and you're trying to get them out, you hear that, you don't know if it's a gunfire. All you know is that it's bad, and people were running. And now I'm told that there is another patient coming out of that area and is going to be brought to an ambulance. We'll see if that is the case. But they have not cleared the scene. There are still a lot of emergency workers, and there you see somebody on that yellow drape on a gurney who's being wheeled over to an ambulance. So I can't, I cover sports, I don't cover news, but I can tell you this was very, very frightening to me, and to anybody, I think, who has a family, it was a scary moment.
Well, anytime, Neil, where you're that close to gunfire, the aftermath can be deadly. And as you've mentioned, the air completely sucked out of the entire city of Kansas City, as so many people were enjoying the celebration. And now Chiefs Kingdom thinking about one thing, and that's, are these 8 to 10 people going to be okay? Chiefs Kingdom now, the thoughts on the victims as this has turned into a celebration to just something unimaginable.
Unimaginable. As you can see here on your screen, you're watching one other person being taken away here in a stretcher in an ambulance. We are hearing from the Associated Press 8 to 10 people injured. We do caution that does not necessarily mean that those 8 to 10 people were shot necessarily. There was a mass exodus, so there could have been injuries along the way. As Neil mentioned, even being pushed aside, shoved out of the way. Injuries can happen. Of course, we have all ages out there at this rally, all abilities out there at this rally. So it may not have been easy for some to run quickly from that scene. So we do caution to remember that does not mean that 8 to 10 people were shot, but we do hear on good authority that at least a few people were indeed hit by bullets.
Yeah, and that's what's so frightening about what Neil just confirmed to us about what he heard, a string of gunshots.
So
let's get back
guys,
to
I am seeing FBI agents, I am seeing ATF agents on the scene now. We are seeing other investigators come in along with Kansas City, Missouri police. So the police presence is growing by the moment.
Oh, no doubt about it. And they will need to throughout the entire afternoon. Again, keep in mind, if you were with others at this parade, or you know someone who is down there with a family, with young children, if they're having a hard time connecting with other ones, little ones who have run from that scene as well, remember that they planned in advance for reunification sites. The police do have those, and you're encouraged to talk to any officer you see to find one near you, and they will help you reunite with your family.
Yeah, Neil just said moments ago he wasn't sure if he hadn't seen any kids that seemed to be lost, but this is a vast area that we're talking about. And Kansas City Police did tweet out about 20 minutes ago that there were still several children who had been separated from their families. So the reunification stations have really, really become crucial and critical as heartbreak and terror have broken out just outside the steps of Union Station following what was a massive and fun celebration. Well, as Neil said, that's all over now. Now we're all in the mode of hoping that those who are hurt are going to be okay, and that they found everybody who had a gun, and that everyone's in custody that perpetrated this thing, because what a mark on Kansas City on what had been a fantastic morning.
Now, as you know, we've been covering the parade and the festivities since 4 o'clock this morning, and we had crews all along this scene, some of which were close enough nearby to witness some of, if not the actual shooting, at least the mass exodus out from the parade and rally site. And we have Grace Smith. She was at 17th and Grand earlier, monitoring the parade, having an enjoyable time. And now we're trying to get back in touch with Grace to see if she has noticed this, the crowds leaving the scene as well. Grace?
Yeah, Carolyn, we are on Grand Boulevard and East 16th Street. We were leaving the parade, trying to get back to the station, and all of a sudden, a policeman came to us saying, "Get over!" And all of a sudden, just about 100 police cars just zoomed by. And ever since then, we have been sitting here just watching this. And in that moment, I knew, I got that gut feeling like what just happened. Something bad has happened. You could just see it on the police officers' faces, on everyone's faces, and then all of a sudden, just a swarm of red. They weren't running. I think we're pretty further back, but no one was happy, obviously, just somber looks on their faces, many holding hands, just trying to wrap their heads around what they just witnessed at Union Station. But ever since then, we've just seen multiple police cars still going down to Union Station, coming back, multiple golf carts going to and from, and you know, police are just still in this area talking with people, and just as you can see, fans are making their way back slowly at this point, just to wrap their heads around what a tragedy this really has been, guys.
That's what everyone is doing, Grace. You're right about that. Everyone's just trying to wrap their heads around this. This now making national news. All of the major networks now reporting on what has happened here in Kansas City, what has happened following a massive celebration. But you look at the police presence, and as we've mentioned throughout our parade coverage, there were 900 police officers who were part of this to help keep people safe. And it had been an absolutely wonderful celebration, and it appeared that everything had been okay until at the very end, when that gunfire broke out and then mass chaos ensued.
And now we're going to go to our Scott Reese, who's walking through that area nearby Union Station. Scott, where are you? What did you see?
Okay. Yeah, Carolyn, I'm here at Pershing in Maine, the southeast corner, which is supposed to be the reunification spot. And right now we are being ushered a few feet away from all the commotion, where, as you can see, there's a whole host of police and bomb squad and other officials, and boy, as many ambulances as I can count right now within our vantage point. I believe we're heading over toward where Neil Jones is, so we'll try not to double up there. But yeah, there's still a lot of confusion, and there's still some spectators who, against the advice of multiple announcements over the public address system about a half hour ago have not cleared the area, just trying to get a glimpse to see what's going on. But we are being ushered back again as they prepare to use this for the reunification spot, and we will keep you posted if we see anything else.
Okay.
Carolyn?
Thank you for keeping us in the loop. Scott, just show us anything else that you can that gives us some insight into what exactly is happening there. Moments ago, we just saw a couple standing out in the middle of the grounds there, just holding each other, sobbing, buckling in tears, not sure if they were affected in some way by the gunfire, but no doubt affected by the fear that came over that huge crowd there at Union Station for this joyous celebration, just starting to let out. Everyone was heading, quietly back to their cars when this sound came out that some thought sounded like fireworks. Potentially, it sounded very rapid, maybe 15 to 20 shots very quickly. Has been confirmed now by both Kansas City, Missouri police and Kansas City Fire that it indeed was a shooting at this rally.
Yeah, FBI, ATF, and now just a massive investigation underway. We're hearing from some people who are in and around. James Palmer is a reporter for the NFL Network. He just tweeted saying, "We have been escorted away." He tweeted this about 40 minutes ago, but says, "We've been escorted away from Union Station after being told to get under the stage that we were on while hosting the parade." So giving you just a flavor of what people who were there right on the stage were told to shelter, not shelter in place, but to get underneath the stage, to get away from the gunfire that was erupting right there just outside of Union Station. And our Neil Jones was only about 35 yards away from that and said, as you mentioned, Carolyn, said it sounded like there was as many as 15 to 20 shots fired. We do know 2 people are in custody. I have seen someone who was taken away in handcuffs. We don't know anything about if they were injured. We don't know anything about how the police, the apprehension of these guys, how they were able to get them to stop shooting. And then again, it all now focuses on those as many as 10 people who were hurt in some way, shape, or form. Don't know if they were shot, but hurt in the after.
All right, we've been watching our affiliate there in Kansas City, KCTV, covering this still unfolding breaking news event in which a shooting took place after the Kansas City Chiefs wrapped their Super Bowl celebration. At this early stage, all we know from officials, as you've been listening, is that 2 armed people were taken into custody, but Lana, several people were injured, multiple people struck, and that seemed to have triggered panic and chaos there in Kansas City and what was meant to be a celebration. Absolutely. Some of the images that we saw were people huddled together. We saw many people being removed by paramedics on golf carts, on gurneys. We do not know the extent of injuries. There are very few details that have in fact been confirmed, but we do know from the Kansas City Police Department that 2 armed people have been detained for additional investigation. We do not know if that is the full extent of the people who were behind this. It is still an active scene. We know that there were injuries. The Associated Press reporting between 8 to 10 injuries. We do not know if those are gunshot wounds. We do not know if those were people who were injured in the ensuing chaos. We know that police have asked people to move outside of this area. We are still assessing the damage. We are still assessing what the motivations may have been for those shootings. So we are trying to separate what we do know for you from what we are hearing. And of course, in a big event like this, where there are thousands of people assembled in a scene of jubilation, there's a lot of people who are talking now. And so we're going to try and make sure that we keep what are rumors and innuendo separate from the cold, hard facts as we know that. So that's right. What's clear, too, though, and all of this taking place in just the past hour or so, is that what was meant to be a huge celebration, I think last year, some 1 million people showed up in Kansas City to be a part of this. It was all through the city. It was through the most densely populated areas. And a lot of parents had their kids there to see Mahomes and all the other athletes as part of this celebration. And we saw some footage of what looked like a mother bracing her son, or at least someone she knows, and being emotional. So we know that something has gone incredibly wrong, and so many people are frightened and afraid who are trying to celebrate today. I think we do have Keith Taylor with us to speak about kind of the bigger picture. Keith is a former assistant commissioner for the New York City Department of Correction and a former NYPD sergeant. Keith, we heard local reporters say that the FBI and ATF are on the scene. What would have been the footprint before anything went sideways in an event of this size?
Thank you for inviting me, and my heart goes to those victims and their family members, and I'm proud of the response of the first responders that were assigned to this event and responded appropriately and helped to save lives. Now, the planning that goes into this incident of national significance, a Super Bowl celebration, is quite significant. And so you have the federal partners, FBI, others. You have the state and local agencies all working together with significant plans, looking at what can happen, what will happen with the resources that are dedicated to it if such an incident occurs. And there are lots of different things going to occur when you have large groups of people. So no doubt the injuries could have been more significant, could have been a worse tragedy, if not for the first responders that were assigned to this event. So they go through their planning process, making certain that there is a high-level coordination between different state, federal, and local resources so that the response will be a coordinated one and will allow for them to quickly address the situation. And it sounds like they will, of course, do a after-action review to see what policies or procedures could perhaps be augmented or changed to minimize the likelihood of this type of thing happening.
Yeah, and Keith, obviously, given that we do not know the extent of those injuries, how many people were injured in the actual shooting, we don't want to speculate on how the police did their work yet until we have some more details about that. But I'm hoping, given your experience, that you could talk to us about the type of police presence that would have been in the area, because we heard from our local station KCTV5 that there was a massive police presence just because of the sheer number of people that were there.
Yes, apparently 900 officers assigned to it, probably multiple jurisdictions participating in this event, as well as state police and the federal assets that were there. You would have SWAT teams, you would have WMD hazmat response teams, you would have a number of specialized units that would be able to provide immediate response to different types of threats. So it's unfortunately, we've had this is the 48th mass shooting for the year, and so it's something that city leaders and law enforcement professionals and first responders take quite seriously in terms of preparing for an unfortunate incident such as this.
And we just want to update our viewers who might be joining us now on what exactly this breaking news event is. Moments after the Kansas City Chiefs, we understand, wrapped their Super Bowl celebration in Kansas City. Police report that shots were fired nearby in apparently a parking garage, and that created what seemed to be just mass chaos among the thousands of people there. They took 2 people into custody who the police say were armed, but many other people they say were injured. Some people struck, and they're now trying to set up local police a child reunification area, suggesting that maybe some children have been separated from their parents in all of this panic.
Well, we certainly saw that there were children in the audience as we have been following the parade as a celebration earlier today, and seeing that confetti arrow that was still falling after people were huddled there crying together. It's really heartbreaking. We want to bring in now Kathy Geider, if we can. She's a retired FBI special agent. She's also the vice president of operations with the private investigation and security consulting firm Veracity IIR. Kathy, do we have you?
Yes, ma'am.
So, Kathy, we understand from our local station, KCTV5, that they saw FBI agents on the scene already. How would the FBI's involvement change the nature of this investigation? What are they doing now?
The FBI is going to work hand in hand with the Kansas City Police Department, the other agencies, local, state, and federal, to pool all their resources and gather as much information as they can from all their various sources to put that information together and come up with an idea of who was involved and what the motives and things of that nature. So they're all going to be working together.
So at this moment, Kathy, I mean, all of this just breaking in the past hour or so, how can police get their hands on all the evidence and all the witness statements? If we're checking the feed from the local police department, they're asking people who were witnesses to this to head to the southwest corner of Pershing in Maine. They now have a child reunification location inside Union Station. And just the panic of whether they were gunshots or bangs being heard can really make people, run and maybe lose sight of who they're with. How do they even begin untangling all of this in a densely populated area of downtown Kansas City? And we're just watching footage of someone appearing to give someone a CPR. I mean, it's all quite jarring to see. How do they get through this and clear things up?
It's going to take some time. Immediately right now, they're trying to get as many witnesses as possible, to get as many statements as possible. They're also going to be utilizing other assets that are in the area. Kansas City already has, I'm sure, a large network of cameras in their downtown area due to the number of events that they have, with Super Bowl parades, with the draft last year. So I'm sure that there are analysts and people who are, obtaining those camera feeds from downtown and working through those feeds to see, what they can find, what evidence is there of people moving throughout the crowds. And once again, trying to get as many people to come forth with information that they can get interviews and get as much detail as they can obtain.
Kathy, I have to imagine that the FBI is trying to prevent things like this from occurring, not just with the police presence, the law enforcement presence, but also trying to monitor chatter, et cetera, in advance of this. How difficult is it to try and keep events like this safe?
It's very difficult because for all the resources, all the time, all the assets that you can put in place, there are people out there who are just bent on doing something nefarious and, trying their best to beat the system, in evil ways. So, right, there are people that do nothing, but their jobs are to monitor social media, to monitor, all the various resources that are out there to see what's being said, what's being talked about in groups. There's people that, prior to this, as soon as the Chiefs won, their work went in to gathering intelligence and information as to, the planning of this parade and what the talk has been out there. So people have been working on this behind the scenes, and they will continue now that they have, the critical incident that just happened.
It's a good point you make. It's one of those moments when you realize that the news may have been much worse if it were not for such a strong police presence there in Kansas City. Kathy, stand by for us if you can. We also want to bring in Sam Vinograd. He's a CBS News contributor, and she is a former Assistant Secretary for Counterterrorism Threat Prevention and Law Enforcement Policy for the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Sam, can you talk to us about what your views are on this unfolding situation and what's jumping out to you at this point?
Certainly. Unfortunately, as we know, parades are highly vulnerable events when it comes to potential shootings. We had an unfortunate incident in Highland Park, Illinois in the past. And because parades are so mass density, there are just so many people in one place, they are always vulnerable targets, and that's exactly why there's a series of preparations that go into play. The Super Bowl itself was a National Special Security Event, or NSSE, which it had law enforcement professionals from various jurisdictions involved in planning. But despite the best efforts to protect the Super Bowl and now the parade, because there are just so many people involved, it is hard to have 100% confidence in security. Now, right now, having worked on the response to Highland Park and other mass casualty events, I can tell you the immediate focus is multi-layered. In the first instance, authorities are working to mitigate any loss of life and any medical issues that may have arisen either from the actual shootings themselves or people trying to flee. Anytime you have individuals trying to flee an event, there's risk of additional damage, whether from crowd control reasons or heart attacks or otherwise. There's always that concern. Further, family reunification is top of mind, and authorities have set up a family reunification center as far as we know. We understand, or we believe we understand, that subjects have been taken into custody. What we don't know right now is whether those subjects acted alone. This could have been some sort of fight that broke out between individuals and weapons were drawn, or there could be some other motivation here. So while the subjects are being interviewed, there are immediate efforts to ensure that, again, no other injuries are sustained, there's no additional loss of life, families are reunified, and to mitigate any additional damage.
And the White House, we should note, is closely monitoring the situation there. But Sam, we don't know anything about the motivation, as you say, and I'm struck by your comments about parades are these vulnerable events, in part because of the mass density. What we understand happened were that the celebration concluded, people were starting to leave, and then at that point is when the gunfire rang out. How would have things been different potentially if this had happened during the event? And is there a concern that after the event wrapped, the security became a little bit more lax, or are they really on high alert until every last person is cleared out of there?
Security officials are on heightened alert until the event itself has ended and until individuals have dispersed and have left the scene. We don't know the particulars here. We don't know if individuals had guns the whole time that they were present on scene, and if the shooting broke out at the end for, again, it could have been a personal reason. So without trying to hypothesize on what the motivation was here, we do have to keep in mind that any time there is mass density of people in one place, an incident is vulnerable. Again, in Highland Park, Illinois, on an Independence Day parade, an individual engaged in an act of targeted violence and terrorism because there were a lot of people gathered, and it was an easier way to inflict damage. In this case, when more individuals are gathered, there's more opportunity, unfortunately, for more casualties and more fatalities just based upon the population density. But security officials do not stop their work until individuals have cleared the scene. First responders were still present, thank goodness, to try to mitigate any loss of life. And the cooperation between all levels of government, federal, state, local, is ongoing, as we're hearing. I believe we heard that the ATF is on scene in addition to local law enforcement, and they will be cooperating on the investigation. Now, if there is the potential that this was an act of targeted violence and terrorism, we'll see different part of the federal enterprise get involved. But in my experience, having worked these issues at the federal level, the federal government is briefed in full as a situation is developed, not only to stay up to date on the information, but also to offer any support that may be needed to the community that's impacted, both right now in this moment and as families are dealing with injured loved ones and potentially fatalities as well.
Sam Vinograd is speaking to us from our Washington bureau. We're all watching footage from earlier in Kansas City, Missouri, as police were trying to tend to people that appeared to be injured after shots were fired in a parking garage there. And Sam, we appreciate you kind of pulling back the veil a bit and giving us a sense of how the different law enforcement entities communicate with each other at a moment like this. All of that happening in real time. I also want to bring back in Keith Taylor, because as we don't know if this was connected to terrorism or what the motivation was from the people who fired those shots, but we're all watching this, Keith, and wondering, geez, is there any mass event with lots of people that we can go to where there isn't this risk?
Yeah.
What's the type of news people can use at home if they do attend a big event, but in the back of their mind, they wonder what happens if everybody panics?
Well, local authorities are usually they're absolutely in touch with their federal counterparts who are going to provide them any information, any intelligence about concerns verifiable concerns about any threats to the event that's taking place. So while this may have some sort of domestic or foreign terrorism connection, it may be more likely that it was perhaps a dispute between two individuals resulting in gunfire. But the investigation will find out exactly what the cause was of this incident, and that information will be shared with the general public. It's always a concern when there are large gatherings of people. The United States has many celebrations of national significance, and so these are the types of things that police departments and other first responders prepare for and train for on a regular basis.
All right, Keith Taylor, thank you. We want to bring in now Jacob Michael. He's on the phone. He was there and witnessed the shooting at the parade. He's also a journalist for News Press now. Jacob, tell us what you witnessed.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. From my vantage point, myself nor my colleague actually saw what had happened as far as the shooting goes. What we did see was people start to run away from the scene, which happened near the intersection of what looks to be Pershing and Kessler Road here in downtown Kansas City. People started to run away from that scene towards Union Station. And then as minutes started to pass, people were starting to run out of Union Station. And that's when you started to see armed military personnel and police start to converge on into Union Station to potentially address a threat. We still don't know that much information about if there are any casualties in this situation. They've moved media pretty far away from the scene right now. The most heavily taped off area is, again, like we had just mentioned, that near that intersection of Pershing and Kessler. So we're waiting to hear more. But once we hear that, we're expected to hear from the Kansas City Police media team very shortly here. So once we get information, we'll relay it back to you guys.
And Jacob, help us understand the connection or the timeline between the conclusion of the celebratory parade. The last that we checked in live, Patrick Mahomes was up with the Lombardi Trophy, and it was very jubilant. And the next time we check in, an hour or so later, there's what seems like a scene of chaos. So give us a sense of the timeline from when the event concluded and what you saw first that made you realize something was wrong. And I'm also just curious about the crush of people and how confusing that moment must have been for everyone.
Yeah, I would say the timeline was probably roughly 10 to 15 minutes as far as once the celebration was over. I mean, there was still a good amount of fans still around, and they were still trying to file out of the area. It's a very heavily crowded area, obviously a very large police scene here for a celebration that was supposed to be for the Kansas City Chiefs winning back-to-back Super Bowls. And then all of a sudden chaos started to break out. We see people running away from certain areas of where fans were, and you could see people were very shaken up. We've seen multiple people leave on stretchers in this situation. So it's a very chaotic scene, and right now it looks as though police are just trying to get more information from witnesses that saw what had happened. But yeah, a very chaotic scene, and on a day that was supposed to be a great celebration.
And Jacob, you're still there, I'm understanding. Am I correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Yes, that's correct.
What is the posture of the police like now? We understand that the people who have largely cleared out of the area were shaken by it, but sometimes you can tell a lot from the demeanor of the law enforcement authorities that you still see there. Can you tell us anything about that?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the police and their demeanor, I mean, they're very much on their toes right now. They're still very much spread out across the area, mostly around Union Station right now. They prepared for things like this. You can tell based on the way they were, of course, instructing people to move away from the scene, wanting to clear ways for medical teams to get through. And right now, they seem to be very prepared for a situation like this. Yeah.
And we understand, Jacob, that police have set up a reunification area for children, for parents who have been separated from their kids. And you also were able to record or shoot some footage yourself that we're able to show our viewers. Talk to me about the reunification efforts, if you see any folks getting back together and what your footage shows us?
I did not see a lot of the reunification aspect of it, as I was still kind of being cleared away from the scene. Right now, we're just kind of huddled together with the rest of the local media here in Kansas City, just waiting to hear more information. But as I alluded to earlier, there was a lot of people shaken up by what they had seen earlier. And what started with, from my vantage point, what sounded like fireworks going off. Apparently, that wasn't what that was. And that's when everyone started to flee away from the scene near that intersection close to Union Station here.
And Jacob, this video that we're seeing that you shot, we see a lot of law enforcement officers running into a building. We see that there are some, looks like Kansas City fans alongside them. Where are they going? What can you tell us about what you witnessed with this?
Yeah, so they're going into Union Station, and from what we know, Union Station is where all this celebration had happened. That's where the Kansas City Chiefs players were, of course, on stage. They were to actually exit, I believe, into Union Station, and once the celebration was over. So the hope is that we can figure out why so many police and military personnel converged into that area, if there was a potential threat possibly, or if they just wanted to make sure that players and coaches and everyone involved with the team was safe once the celebration was over.
Well, it really speaks to how fluid the situation still is. And I wonder if those people running along with the police dressed in red with Kansas City shirts might be plainclothes police officers or undercover cops, which might also be a part of the posturing today of hundreds. Jacob, we appreciate you spending some time with us. I'm just wondering, throughout all of this, if it shook you in any way and just how unnerving an experience this is for you and other people there today.
Yeah, well, this is a situation in my journalism career, reporting career, I've never had to deal with. And when you go to something like this, your assignment usually is to just, get reactions from fans and kind of set the scene with people just having fun and celebrating, the game of football that brings so many people together, and the fact that the Chiefs have been winning games. All of a sudden, everything kind of takes a left turn and you have to pivot. And for me, it's been a lot to take in. I've never had to deal with something like this before. But, I can only speak for myself. I'm sure there are a lot of people involved that aren't in my position, or the other fellow media members that I'm here with. For those people, I'm sure are very shaken by what has happened. I've seen a lot of reaction from people on social media saying, Kansas City's better than this. People just very disappointed at what has transpired today.
Yeah. Jacob, Michael, thank you so much for bringing us your firsthand account.
Thank you, Jacob.
We're going to go back over to Sam Vinograd. She's a CBS News contributor. She's a former Assistant Secretary for Counterterrorism, Threat Prevention, and Law Enforcement Policy for the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Sam, are you learning anything from your contacts about whether or not this could be something that's related to terrorism, or this could be something that is, as you said, the other theory potentially is that this was an altercation between the two individuals that are currently being held by police as suspects? Are you learning anything more?
I haven't learned anything additional at this time, but I do understand that authorities at all levels of government, state, local, and federal, are working to ascertain the motivation of the individuals engaged in this altercation, and again, to ensure that there are no other individuals that could be involved in this that could inflict damage elsewhere, either on this scene or in other jurisdictions. And that's why there are various lines of effort underway. The individuals that are apprehended are being questioned by law enforcement. Ostensibly, any social media presence that they have is being reviewed to ensure that this is not related to targeted violence or terrorism, and again, to mitigate any reverberations elsewhere, while the immediate focus is ensuring that there is no additional loss of life. Now, a parade, a high-density event, is a vulnerable target. Law enforcement engages regularly in drills to ensure that any security risks are accounted for. There's training that's delivered to law enforcement personnel, first responders, and otherwise. They engage in scenario planning for exactly these kinds of events. And what we really have to figure out here as we proceed is, again, what the motivation was. if this was a personal dispute, it is a personal dispute with fatal repercussions on individuals that had no actual tie to the incident. But the FBI, state and local terrorism officials are going to be trying to rule out any other motivation here at this time. And I would imagine that the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force will be consulted as appropriate to ensure that there is not a terrorism nexus. While these individuals are questioned, their social media is scrubbed as appropriate, and they are questioned to see if they actually have a tie to the crime. We have not heard directly yet from local law enforcement, so we don't really know if the individuals that were apprehended were in fact directly involved in the shooting itself, if they're ruled out as subjects or otherwise. It's just too soon to tell, and that's why right now local law enforcement at all levels is trying to secure this location and get medical help to those that may have been impacted. I would imagine that at the federal level right now, the Department of Homeland Security, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the Department of Justice more generally are speaking with the White House, the Office of Gun Violence Prevention, an office that I work closely with, to really review what resources from across the federal government should be marshaled to send to Kansas City. There are a range of victim services that the federal government can provide in addition to any investigatory support that may be helpful as the situation is stabilized. But at this point, we cannot yet say that the situation is stable. We have to wait to hear from officials on the ground to hear from them that the situation has been stabilized, that the individuals in question were the subjects, were the suspects in this altercation.
Sam, we appreciate that. I just want to update our viewers that the star quarterback for the Kansas City Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes, has sent out a message via his X account saying praying for Kansas City. And as you reference as well, there's so little official information that we have and that we have confirmed. We do know that 4 shooting victims are apparently at 2 hospitals, one of them in critical condition. But as we wait for answers for some of these key questions, Sam, I'm wondering about if you know, you may not know, but the alcohol component for a celebration like this. It would make it unsafe, it would make it dangerous for fans, but it's a football Super Bowl party all day long. It's like a holiday in Kansas City. Do you know or have any sense of if part of the police posture may have been trying to limit alcohol consumption, if at all possible?
I don't know the answer to that, but we do know, unfortunately, that alcohol is not a necessary ingredient for personal altercations that turn ugly or acts of targeted violence and terrorism. So I would imagine that law enforcement's priority in a parade like this is to mitigate a loss of life rather than focusing purely on alcohol consumption.
All right, Sam Vinograd, thank you very much. We also want to thank Keith Taylor, Kathy Geider, and Jacob Michael. Thanks to you all. We're going to bring you more live coverage now from our Kansas City station, KCTV.
Someone has been apprehended. People who had been told to stay and shelter inside of the Westin have now been told that they can leave. So to what Janae just said, finally, a bit of good news.
And the bad news is that we are hearing of up to 10 victims. Severity of injuries has not been confirmed just yet, but we are hearing from our sources with University Health, which is formerly Truman Medical Center, Children's Mercy Hospital, and St. Luke's, that they have all received patients, again, conditions of which we are not confirming just yet. We do also have KCTV5's Nathan Brennan out at Pershing and West Penway. Nathan, what did you witness? I know you were initially along the parade route in the thick of things.
Well, I tell you what, Carolyn, we actually weren't at the situation when it happened. We'd actually pulled out and we were heading back towards the station when this incident went down. But I want to go ahead and give you a look. So right now we're at the intersection of Pershing and West Penway. And as you guys can see, this is part of what makes this situation so dangerous. Still so much traffic, so much congestion, people unable to get out of the area. And we actually just spoke with a family from St. Joe. They were traveling from St. Joe and they were waiting for all of this traffic to clear out. And they were right in the middle of this. We actually spoke with a grandfather and a grandson who were about 100 feet from the situation, and the grandfather was describing the scene and just saying that he was just hearing pop, 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 hearing those gunshots, grabbing his grandson and just running frantically. And that was the situation that he was describing. I mean, he was just talking about how chaotic the situation was and just everyone just running frantically and cops turning people other ways in different directions. So a very scary situation. Again, you're getting another look here towards Union Station. As you can still see, so many people, so many cars still trying to pull out of this area, which is making this so dangerous. So again, people trying to leave this area, speaking to some of these families, we actually asked them, they said they didn't want to go on air because they're so shaken up from this situation. So we have families that are traveling from far away that aren't even here in Kansas City, just trying to get home, trying to return to their loved ones as well. But we'll give you more updates again as we start to gather them. We'll toss it back to you guys.
Nathan, thank you so much. Be safe out there, and we just want everyone to get home as quickly as possible from this very, very scary scene. Still, they're all around the entire area of Union Station and to on over to Crown Center and on up really the parade route too. It's time to get everyone out of downtown. We're going to go to Gianni Navarro now for the latest on what you are seeing from where are you right now, Gianni? Right near the corner where it happened, right?
Yeah, Carolyn, unfortunately, near where it happened, I'm on Pershing Road and Kessler Road. We are behind police tape and where all the media is being set up right now. Now, before this, I was actually on the opposite side, but right now you can see a heavy police presence. There is EMS on scene, paramedics, fire here on scene right now. But I was actually on the opposite side on Grand Boulevard because I was covering the parade originally, and I actually made my way over here. While I was making my way over here, I was told I was unsafe, so I made sure that I was in a safe location and I was able to find that. But in the meantime, before I got here, I was talking to a few families and I was asking them what they experienced, and some say they heard the pops and the shots, and some others say they didn't, but they just saw everyone running and it was chaotic, so they just started to follow the crowd and run as well. I spoke to one father and son who said they were just trying to get by Union Station. All of a sudden they told everyone to shelter, lock the doors, and they were locked into Union Station for a bit before they were released. So, but the main theme here is everyone is kind of somber and upset because today was supposed to be a day about celebration, celebrating our Chiefs and their back-to-back victory, and all of a sudden something like this happened. So everyone says they are saddened by what is happening here, but of course everyone I spoke to was safe. This is definitely a tragic event, but I will definitely let you know any more details as soon as I get them, you guys. Carolyn, back to you for now.
All right, thank you, Gianni.
All right, and we should tell you that we're going to get to Scott in just a second, but Kansas City, Missouri Police will be holding a news conference with Mayor Quinton Lucas in just a few minutes. All right, now we can get back. Sorry about that, Scott. Take it away.
All right, Brad, just a couple of quick updates here. I'm still just across the street from the Crown Plaza and probably 30 yards or so from the reunification point here at Main and Pershing, and everything looks quiet there, and I can confirm it is quiet. I talked to one of the officers, and he said that all families have been reunified, so there's nobody outstanding in terms of family members unaccounted for or anything like that, so that's some good news. I also asked about the incident in terms of apprehending a suspect inside the parking lot here at the Crown Plaza, and he said to me that was a separate thing. So he wouldn't elaborate on exactly what that was as opposed to what might have been going on at Union Station earlier, but apparently we may have multiple incidents here going on simultaneously. Guys?
Yeah, that's what it sounded like, Scott. You're right. It's apparently an incident separate from the shooting in front of Union Station, but nevertheless, people are absolutely terrified down in that area. Parade goers who were there, not sure what to think, told to evacuate, and then all of a sudden those who were trying to evacuate, some of them were told to shelter in place again. So it has been a harrowing afternoon, and the reports that are coming out, multiple people hurt, 8 to 10 people hurt, some victims at Children's Mercy Hospital. Mind-numbing to think about that this day started as a celebration of our team that just won the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that was what the day was supposed to be. It was supposed to be a celebratory party for Kansas City, and now no doubt a panic scene and a crime scene that will last for a few more hours at least as they investigate what exactly transpired here, and no doubt will put a black eye on what was to be a bright spot on Kansas City's history.
Well, this is making national, international news right now. This is what's being reported on, obviously not just in Kansas City, but all of the major news outlets around the country now. looking at Kansas City, checking out what is happening. And you're right, this is not it's not a good look for this city, especially when the city was it encouraged people to gather and to party as one, to celebrate their Kansas City Chiefs, and it's anything but a celebration now.
By all accounts, was a fabulous day up until just about 2 o'clock. We are now getting towards 3:30, and we understand that Mayor Quinton Lucas, who had been up on that stage celebrating our winning team, will join the police chief of Kansas City, Missouri, here with a news conference, and we will bring that to you just as soon as they get started talking here, because we are anxious to, this is such a wide scene here, and it has been hard to kind of gather bits and pieces from each corner. And so we are hoping that Chief Stacey Graves can kind of bring it all together for us and kind of at least surmise what has happened and assure us that indeed the scene is safe now.
Well, and that's what, for our viewers at home, as you're watching, I mean, you can tell that there's still crime tape up. There are still such a heavy police presence. We had a shooting incident right after the parade, and then anywhere from 40 to 45 minutes after that, there was another incident across the way inside a hotel where then guests were told to shelter because there was an incident. We're not sure exactly what happened there, but again, we've seen there are still many ambulances on the scene. We have seen officers with guns drawn as of just 20 minutes ago. The scene has calmed down since then, but a massive police presence in downtown Kansas City right now, and so a lot of people just kind of shaking their heads saying, what more? What else is going to happen? This has been an unbelievable day.
And they are asking still that everyone, if you know of someone down there, this is not a time to sit and watch and try to see what's happened. It is a time to get on home as safely and quickly as you can. They're also asking that everybody in the Union Station parking garage move out, do not come in there. They need all of that space for all of these emergency vehicles to tend to these potential victims or anyone left there at the scene that they need to deal with. So they're asking basically everyone to move out as quickly but as safely as possible so that they can get a better handle on the expansiveness of this crime scene. It is a big one, but the corner of Union Station that you were just seeing there is where allegedly those initial shots were fired, the ones of great concern that led to the injuries that we're talking of here, between 8 and 10 people injured. Conditions are not confirmed yet. We are hearing unconfirmed conditions on some of these people, but we're waiting to get full confirmation before we bring that to you. But we are hearing that area hospitals, University Health, Children's Mercy, and St. Luke's all have received patients. So it is.
And we're hoping the best for them, for sure. All right, our Neil Jones he was very close to the shooting situation when it all went down. We want to check back in with Neil for more reporting. Neil?
Well, this is the spot I was at, actually a little closer in the intersection. We were preparing to go forward and do interviews with fans at the end of the event on stage. It ended. People started walking out. Photographer Greg Malota and I started walking into the intersection, and all of a sudden, like a stream of firecrackers going off, pop, 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 and people began to run in any direction. This is some video that Greg shot at that moment, and I think it captures the fear in the moms, dads, grandparents' faces as they had young children. They were trying to get their older parents and grandparents out. You had whole families here that had been here all day celebrating a wonderful thing, and suddenly you've got the police rushing in and going in multiple directions because it looked like that there were people fleeing. I don't know if that was true or not. Someone yelled, "There's the shooter," and the police went running off in that direction. I have no idea if that was correct or not, but a bunch bunch of police went one way, police spread out and began to look at the various people who had been shot, but the crowd was going in all directions, just as you would expect they would do in such a harrowing, horrible moment. Again, what makes it so terrible is there were so many families involved, and you're just trying to get out. Our photographer saw at least 2 people who they were performing CPR on the ground. They also appeared to subdue someone. I heard somebody, and I do not know if it was a police officer, say that man is a suspect. And there were 3 or 4 police officers on him. They got him subdued and took him off in a golf cart. They took one victim off immediately on what looked to be a fire department or a police golf cart that was for situations like this. And then they took them to ambulances that were nearby. The presence here by the police and law enforcement was big all day long, as you would expect when you have a massive crowd in one place. So there were many, many police officers immediately on the scene. Again, you know, you're afraid. You don't know what direction to run. I didn't know. Our photographer, we didn't know which direction to go because we didn't know if there were multiple gunmen or what direction they were going. But eventually, and I don't know if it was 7 or 10 minutes, things began to calm down. But then police officers would race off. They'd be called on a radio and they would go a different direction. I suppose that might have been towards Crown Center to the east. But the end result was just an awful, awful scene at the end of what had been such a joyous day. And now, of course, we know that there are multiple victims. We can only hope that they'll be okay.
Boy, you're right about that, Neil. We want to thank you. And on social media, there is video now that is out there that appears to show fans who were at the parade.
All right, if you are just joining us, we continue to cover this breaking news story. Heartbreak out of Kansas City, Missouri, after a celebration there apparently turned deadly. CBS News can now confirm that there is at least one confirmed fatality from that shooting that took place following the celebratory parade of the Kansas City Chiefs.
That's right. And we just heard the reporter there who was on the scene give a very vivid description of what happened as events unfolded. He described the sound as fireworks, a series of gunshots. Police confirmed that shots were fired in a parking garage near Union Station, where, according to one witness, 20 minutes earlier, you had the Kansas City Chiefs and their team and families celebrating their second consecutive Super Bowl win. And after those shots were fired, it was absolute pandemonium, panic and chaos, as you would imagine, in the center of a major city. Last year, 1 million people showed up at this location to celebrate their Super Bowl win. And so likely you had tens of thousands of people, not just in the vicinity, but lining the parade route as well. 2 armed people were taken into custody, according to Kansas City police. But now they've been tasked with reconnecting what may be children who've been disconnected from their parents in some of that chaos. They have a child reunification area near the station you're looking at now. And while Lana just mentioned that at least one confirmed death has been reported by the Kansas City Fire Department, there are several others who are in hospital receiving treatment at this moment. So a frightening, horrific turn of events on what was meant to be a celebration.
Absolutely. And we have been watching all of those images as they've been coming in and hearing from eyewitnesses, as well as experts in law enforcement and Homeland Security. There is a little bit of good news in terms of the reunification. The Kansas City Police Department now saying that they are down to 1 reunification site. There had been multiple sites before. They're also asking for the public's assistance, that eyewitnesses should report in on what they saw during these chaotic moments. Again, this was at the conclusion of the official event. There were, in addition to the Kansas City Chiefs and all of the luminaries that were there, the Missouri governor, Mike Parson, the First Lady, they were also in attendance. They have tweeted that they were there when the shots were fired, but that they are in fact safe. We're continuing to try and parse out what the fact is from the fiction, what the rumors are, and what we now have confirmed. And we do know that 1 person is dead at this moment. We are also expecting to get a press conference from the authorities there. And of course, as soon as that happens, we're going to bring it to you live.
At this point, we want to rejoin our local affiliate, KCTV, as they continue to gather new information.
Someone came down around and told us what was going on, told us that we're okay, but we can't leave just yet because everybody's flooding the streets, so the buses couldn't leave yet. And so we all just kind of sat there and waited until we finally got the okay to get going.
So that was the initial pops that you were talking
Right.
about that led to the apprehension of potentially 2 shooters involved. But then there was a secondary situation that emerged just catty-corner to Union Station over at Weston Crown Center, where there was some sort of disturbance there, and they were also asking everyone in the West End then to shelter in place. That has since been cleared. Apparently completely unrelated issue, but very clearly a scary situation for everyone. The almost probably 1 million people converging on downtown for this victory celebration, and to try to get all of those people out of downtown quickly, not an easy task.
Utter chaos. Absolute utter chaos. And you could see it on people's faces. You could hear it in their voices. We've seen fans who were hugging, embracing, and crying after this, just glad that they had made it out of this thing unscathed. Now, we are waiting for Mayor Quentin Lucas and Kansas City, Missouri Police Chief Stacey Graves, who are going to be holding a news conference here momentarily to try and explain, to try and walk us through what has happened. So we are waiting for that to happen. They are staging that area right now. We have several crews obviously on the scene right now, so we will be bringing that to you just as soon as it happens. But we're just like you watching. We're waiting for answers like you are, and reporting on something like this so chaotic, so many different moving pieces. It's been... And the other thing about this, Carolyn, is how this happened. To go from something that was the culmination of such a joyous morning to then all of a sudden people are saying, wait a minute, is that fireworks or gunfire? And that was happening not all that far away from the stage where so many people were, and hundreds of thousands of people in that area.
Well, absolutely. Not to mention the players on the stage, the dignitaries on the stage. We're hearing now, we had heard from Missouri Governor Mike Parson. He, of course, took to the podium there momentarily to congratulate the Chiefs. He has since reported that he is okay. We've also now learned that Kansas Governor Laura Kelly was in attendance as well. She was told to evacuate, and she has now reported back that she is safely out of harm's way at this point. But many people around there, right in that area of the stage when this initially occurred. Again, just seconds before 2 o'clock hit is when that gunfire was reported, and we have since learned 8 to 10 people have been hurt in some way in this shooting. That does not mean that they were all shot, but 8 to 10 people injured in some way during this disturbance. And sadly, we are hearing that some of the patients were taken to Children's Mercy, which confirms our biggest fear that there were children involved. But there were also patients taken to University Health, formerly Truman Medical Center, and St. Luke's Hospital as well.
All right. Our Shane Kinnicky was talking with a couple of people who saw what happened and heard this.
So when I was leaving, and I don't remember if my other friends were still with me or not at the time because it kind of blurred.
It did.
But when we were heading west, trying to get back and away from it, we saw the police swarm a stairwell, and then we heard another pop from there, and that's when I was like, okay, we're gone.
Time to move. Similar situation.
Same. Yes, I was on the probably to her right. Probably on her right side when everything was going on. And then so we kind of circled back, but then all of the people in FBI and police, they were all like, okay, everybody has to go that way towards Crown Center. And so everybody started going that way, and then everybody's trying to come back because everybody's parked over here. And now that's a crime scene, we can't get in the parking garage. So everybody's
until it's cleared up
and stuck.
Because your cars are still in there as well.
And as we've mentioned, we had crews for the parade and for that rally stationed all down Grand, basically from the City Market on down to Union Station. Along the way, we had Nijah Hood along the parade route as well. Nijah, what are you seeing at this point, and what did you hear at any point along the way?
Well, guys, it's really, it was a celebratory day turned tragic. We just spoke to multiple witnesses who were there at Union Station as the event unfolded. I just spoke to a family of about 5 or 6 people, one of whom was pregnant, and they are understandably very shaken. One of them was inside Union Station when the incident took place and steps away from the shooter. They told us that they were actually in the room right next to where the shooter was. They were were told that the shooter was in the bathroom. They were locked up in the room next door trying to seek shelter. And the first thing they remember was people running and then chaos. They and other witnesses say that they were told by police to hop over a barricade and get away from the scene. I spoke to another witness who actually was inside of the nearby apartment complex, and she says she heard multiple gunshots, and she is traumatized because she actually saw the deceased bodies on the street. And so understandably, she was very emotional. It was hard for her to even speak to us, but just a lot of tragedy happening here outside of Union Station on what was supposed to be a very positive and happy day. And so truly a sad story. We are on the scene working to get you the latest information. We will continue to update you as we receive new information. Outside of Union Station, Nigel Hood, KCTV5.
All right, Nigel, thank you. And you're right about that. A truly tragic day, and we are learning of some news that we hoped we wouldn't have to report to you.
Yeah, we are hearing now one person is confirmed dead now, 14 in all hurt in this shooting after the parade, including 3 patients in critical condition, 5 in serious condition are the latest reports we're getting. Again, 1 fatality reported now from the scene outside of Union Station just after the Chiefs' victory parade.
All right, we've been watching KCTV there in Kansas City. We want to pull away from that to now bring you the local police update from today's shooting, where at least 1 person was killed.
After I'm done speaking, Police Chief Graves will give details on the incident that happened earlier today. A few things that I want to make sure we note at the outset. First, today, we had 600 Kansas City, Missouri Police Department officers, 250 from outside agencies. We went out today, like everyone in Kansas City, looking to have a celebration. That celebration was marred by a shooting today. And we recognize that there are some who are injured. We are praying for the safety of everyone. I've talked to a few different folks so far. One, we have spoken to the Kansas City Chiefs, who made clear that their prayers are with everyone who was at the parade today, everyone in Kansas City, and everyone who was touched by this incident. They also noted that their players, coaches, and staff are all accounted for at this point and safe. We, however, know that this is a fluid situation, so all that we are sharing now may change as the hours go ahead. We've also received a call from the White House that offered all federal assistance in the investigation. We had federal agencies present today. We appreciate that, and certainly in the days ahead and the hours ahead, we will make sure we continue to do this work. I will say personally, first, a thank you to the women and men of law enforcement, to the women and men who work with the Kansas City Fire Department and our other agencies. When the shooting started, I, like many others, ran for safety. I saw a number of agencies, including the Kansas City Police Department, officers with guns drawn who were running towards danger. We thank them for that. As I was leaving the scene, I saw members of our Kansas City Fire Department administering aid to folks who were seriously injured without concern for the shootings and the challenges that were near them. This is absolutely a tragedy, the likes of which we would have never expected in Kansas City, and the likes of which we will remember for some time. However, I want to say thank you to those who are making sure that we are safe today, those who are investigating this incident, and those who will continue to make sure that those who committed these acts today are brought to justice. We'll come back for some questions at the end of the Chief's comments, but now the Police Chief, Stacey Graves.
Chief Stacey Graves, Kansas City, Missouri Police Department. At the conclusion of the Chiefs rally today, there were shots fired on the west side of Union Station. Immediately, officers responded to the area, took 2 people into custody, and also immediately rendered life-sustaining aid to those victims. We're still gathering information on the number and the status of victims. But like I said, we know that one of the victims is deceased. We also know that officers ran towards danger. Officers were there to keep everyone safe. I'm angry at what happened today. The people who came to this celebration should expect a safe environment. We had over 800 law enforcement officers, Kansas City and other agencies, at the location to keep everyone safe. Because of bad actors, which were very few, this tragedy occurred. even in the presence of uniformed law enforcement officers who, again, ran towards them and took them into custody. To the people who were injured in this tragedy, our hearts go out to you and your families. This investigation is just beginning, and we are working safely to clear all surrounding areas and businesses. This is still an active investigation. We will continue to keep you updated. We will keep you updated on Twitter and most likely a follow-up press availability. Did you have anything? No. One of our victims has been declared deceased. We have right now we have up to 10 to 15 injured by yes. Right now, we do not have an exact number of people who were victims of a gunshot wound. It could be upwards from 10 to 15, with one deceased. I do not have conditions on our victims just yet.
Any believed to be children?
I do not believe that any of them were children.
Any law enforcement injured in this? First responders?
Nothing of note.
Chief, what prompted? What do you guys believe now prompted the issue?
That is still under investigation. I myself was outside when I heard the shots fired. It is an ongoing investigation. It's going to take us a little bit to determine exactly what led up to the shooting. I will say, though, we do have 2 suspects in custody.
There are circulating on social media that some fans may have helped contain one of those.
I have heard that as well. I have heard that fans got involved in the apprehension or the pursuit of one of the suspects. I cannot confirm that right now, but that is something that I have heard myself. Yes?
What the response time, because you say 10 to 15 hostages injured in the shooting, but there was 800 officers there. This happened pretty quickly. So can you talk about when this started, sort of a timeline from there to the point where your officers responded to the point where you had KCFD helping to
absolutely.
Your first aid?
As soon as the rally concluded, there were shots fired on the west side of Union Station. Officers were on scene in the area. I know one of the suspects was immediately pursued on foot. Like I said, there was 2 suspects in custody. I have heard the information that was just requested. I will confirm or deny that. But after that, immediately officers began rendering life-sustaining aid, calling in fire, which is the fire department, to also assist those victims.
Do you know if there were more than 2 people taken into custody? Because we had 2 people, after you guys had made your announcement, there were 2 people in custody, 2 people live on our air being taken, handcuffed, put into vans. So can you talk about that and the process as this investigation continues?
I don't know exactly the 2 that you're talking about that your camera caught on video being loaded into a wagon. I don't know that, but I can tell you that in and around that scene, it is still active. Not active in necessarily threats, but it's a very active scene. We're still investigating. This is still early on. We still have parties that are walking into hospitals.
Do you know anything about the suspects in terms of where they're from? Are they from?
I do not know that, but that's something that I also will be finding out.
2 questions. We were hearing upwards of maybe 20 shots. Can you talk about the number that you heard?
I'm hearing 10 to 15, possibly 15, with the one that is deceased.
And do you know anything about the timing? It seems odd that it's waited to the very end of the rally.
I don't have anything about, I can't give you an answer on the timing. I can just say that that's when it occurred, and we are investigating what led up to that. Maybe once we get some of those details, we'll know why that happened at that time, but right now it's still too new.
Chief, is it just one incident or multiple incidents that injured?
That is something that is under investigation.
Mayor Lucas talked about how you were on the ground and you yourself had to run for safety. I understand we're still waiting on a timeline and trying to understand what exactly happened. But we were having a Super Bowl parade, and this is what the country is talking about now. What is your message to this city at a time like this?
I second the comments about the chief of police. I'm heartbroken. First of all, I'm praying for the victims and the families impacted. I start with them. I'm incredibly upset, disappointed. I was there with my wife. I was there with my mother. We never would have thought that we, along with Chiefs players, along with fans, hundreds of thousands of people, would be forced to run for our safety today. I think that I'll let the investigation shake out before coming to any further conclusions, but I think the initial response absolutely is anger. You know, we have done a number of these now, and this is a day that a lot of people look forward to, something they remember for a lifetime. And what they shouldn't have to remember is the threat of gun violence, marring a day like this, injuring them and their families. This morning, I was actually thinking about bringing my child, as many people in Kansas City did. And I don't want us to have to, in our country, for every big event, think about a concern of being shot. As the chief noted, we had a lot of law enforcement officers there today. They did exceptional and outstanding work, and I will second that again. Because on your timeline point, I was inside of Union Station. We heard something. A number of us start running, and I see a stream of officers going the exact other direction, in with guns drawn, ready to address danger. And that was the situation throughout. People who responded absolutely immediately. But I wish that we lived in a world where they wouldn't have to do that. I wish we live in a world where we wouldn't have to see incidents like that. But I'm as heartbroken as anybody. We will do a full and thorough investigation. I hope that we bring whoever this is to justice, and we will continue to try to make sure that we can be as safe as possible. However, when you have people who decide to bring guns to events, when you have people who are deciding to try to mar events, celebratory ones like this one, all of us start to become members of this club that none of us want to be a part of, which is those who have experienced mass shootings. I hope for Kansas City this is one of the last times we experience that. What's that? Sorry, go ahead.
In danger at any point?
Was I in danger?
Any other players? Chiefs players?
You know what? I think we'll let the investigation take a look at that. The police department responded effectively, I think incredibly quickly, to make sure that people would be out of harm's way. That being said, a number of us had to flee from a situation because we heard a sound of gunshots. So I'll let you answer your own question in terms of whether you think that's something that puts you in danger or not. In my view, anytime shots are nearby, you don't know where they're coming from, you don't know who's firing them and all of that, then perhaps there is a situation of danger. But
thanks, guys. Thank you, guys. We're going to get back inside.
Can I ask a fire question?
Of the 10 to 15 injured, that you say, are all of those gunshots and whatnot, and do you have a sense of how many, or are some of those also critical in injury?
We've covered that. We don't have that information.
I just have a fire question.
Hold on. 10 to 15 is what we have. Potentially 15. One deceased. I don't have a condition on the other gunshot victims.
Gunshots.
Correct. It's correct.
We don't know how many.
One fire question.
No, I do not.
Because Chief Graves said there
We're going to have a lot of updates later, guys. We got to go inside and gather this information. I appreciate it.
What are the updates, Jake, later?
Well, just look on Twitter.
I just have one. I just have one. Excuse me. I just have one thing to say. This is not Kansas City. I'm angered by what happened, but I want you to know that the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department and all the law enforcement officers that were there today, that were serving and protecting, did the best that they could, and I'm so proud of them that they ran into danger, getting 2 people into custody, and at the same time rendering life-sustaining aid to those victims. We were here for a safe celebration, and because of 2 bad actors or more, is why we're standing here today. We will recover as a city. My heart goes out to our victim who is deceased, but your police department stands ready, and we are invested in the safety and betterment of Kansas City. Thank you.
We'll send you guys more updates on Twitter, okay? Follow the Twitter account and we'll put the updates.
All right. We have been listening to authorities in Kansas City provide an update on the shooting that took place in the area of the Chiefs Super Bowl victory parade. The police chief confirmed at least 1 person has been killed. 2 suspects are in custody. But, Errol, the thing that popped out to me from that press conference was that she said, Police Chief Stacey Graves, I'm angry at what happened today. And we heard that echoed from Mayor Quinton Lucas, who said he thought about he was there with his wife and his mother, and he thought about bringing his kid. And he said, I don't want for every big event to worry about being shot.
But that's such a real statement, because so many of us now do, because of incidents like this. The police chief is angry. The mayor is upset. At least one person is dead. The police chief there also saying that between 10 and 15 people have been injured. It's unclear exactly how many of them were victim of gunshot wounds, but we heard them begin the press conference by saying you had hundreds of police officers and other officials in the area of the parade at the time of the shooting, and they do now have, in their language, 2 suspects in custody who they believe triggered all of this. Let's not forget that you had such a crush of people that panic itself could have led to injuries and chaos and pain. We want to jump on the phone now with Jeremiah Wilson. He's a Chiefs fan, traveled from Nebraska to be at the parade with his 7-year-old daughter. Jeremiah, how are you and your daughter doing, and what did you witness today?
We're doing okay. We're just kind of shaken up a little bit, and she's watching Bluey at the moment, just kind of trying to. She's autistic, so she doesn't really understand. She thought it was fireworks going on, but she got really scared when everybody started running. So I had to pick her up as soon as I recognized that they were gunshots, and we just started running with everybody.
We have this image from local police, an aerial shot of the most joyous moment. You had tens of thousands of people outside Union Station there in a crowd of red, a sea of red. Where were you in the crowd? And then where did you go when you realized something was wrong and you picked up your daughter to get out of the way?
So we were kind of up in the middle area. Probably, I think I know what shot you're talking about, but we were kind of off to the left in the middle when we heard the gunshots. And we ran up the hill, and once we started seeing everybody else run, because it was probably equivalent to maybe 4 or 5 city blocks, and you could definitely hear the pop, 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 and it sounded like I don't even know. I haven't been paying attention to the news or nothing, so I don't know what the hell went on, to be honest with you. I just know we got the hell out of there.
Jeremiah, I also have little ones who enjoy Bluey. How will you explain what happened to your daughter?
It makes me, I don't get to do, I'm a single dad, so I've been raising my daughter since she was knee-high grasshopper, since she was about 2 months old, and getting out and doing things, with work and everything else makes it really difficult to be able to have those special moments with her that I'd like to be able to have. And I took her out of school today to go down to this parade and for us to have some time together and create some memories around, just some things that I enjoy and some things that she enjoys. And she made a lot of friends there at the very beginning. For it to end like that was just sad. I mean, I can't even put it into words. I really haven't had time to process a whole lot.
Jeremiah, we so appreciate you jumping on the phone and speaking with us, because so many people had an experience like yours today there in Kansas City. You still sound shaken from what you've been through. I just want to share with our viewers that CBS News can now report that this shooting appears to be criminally related and potentially the result of an argument or dispute that turned violent. So according to our police sources, there's no indication that this is terrorism related. But for a single dad like yourself who drives, I'm imagining, maybe you flew from Nebraska with your daughter to do something special, like so many people came from the region, just to be a part of this joy today. What's your response to the news that this may have just been an argument turned violent?
Back in my day, we used to pick up our hands and ball them up into fists, and we fought it out that way. And nobody seems to handle anything like they used to back in the day. And in this day and age, everybody wants to pick up weapons and, figure out what the easiest way to hurt somebody the most is. And unfortunately, that's guns. And, it's a quick way for little kids to do what they're doing and cause these problems. And it's not even just kids. It's people that are being ignorant, that don't want to fight. They don't want to box it out. They don't want to duke it out. They want to sit there and pick up weapons and cause the most catastrophe that they can without realizing that 20 years from now, when they're sitting in a jail cell, they're going to realize, oh, I messed up. But it's too late. You already did what you did.
Well, it sounds like you did everything you could to keep your daughter safe. How did you get away?
Ran, took cover, ran some more. There were cars parked all over.
Were you carrying your daughter?
Yeah, I was carrying her for the most part. Yeah, she's not a light package.
Well, Jeremiah Wilson.
Go ahead.
No, I just want to make sure we give you time to share your story. It's clear that you know this is a traumatizing incident. So thank you for sharing with us what you remember, what you saw, and what you did to keep your daughter safe. Thank you for joining us today.
You said the families aren't okay?
No, I'm thanking you for sharing with us that you and your daughter are okay. It sounds like.
Is everybody else okay? That's what I want to know.
Unfortunately, Jeremiah, there is a report of one fatality. We don't know anything about who that person was, but we do know that there were somewhere between 10 to 15 people who were injured. And again, we don't know if those people were injured as a result of the shooting or the crush of the crowd afterwards. But you're so kind to care about others. As you were starting to describe the scene as you picked up your daughter and were trying to run with her, and I know 7 years old, it can be heavy. Jeremiah, we just want to thank you for sharing your story.
Absolutely, I appreciate you guys, and hopefully everybody, everybody else is okay. Man.
Thank you,
okay,
Jeremiah.
There's no kids. Is there any kids? Can you tell me that?
Yeah, not as far as we know, according to police from their most recent press update. But
Good.
thank you, Jeremiah, for caring as well. We do now want to bring in Sam Vinograd, a CBS News contributor, former Assistant Secretary for Counterterrorism, Threat Prevention and Law Enforcement Policy for the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Sam, I'm moved by the conversation we just had with a single father there trying to just have fun with his daughter and could have been one of the victims today. We have this development that it appears the shooting appears to have stemmed from an argument. What can you tell us about that piece of this puzzle and how it helps explain what we all witnessed?
Well, Errol, regardless of the motivation, whether criminal or terrorism related, we relearned a brutal lesson today. And that is that law enforcement alone cannot mitigate the gun epidemic in this country. You think about this parade. There are over 800 dedicated law enforcement officials at this parade. They engaged in extensive planning, extensive drills, and did everything in their power to prevent an incident like this. But law enforcement intelligence officials just cannot account for every contingency related to guns in this country today. And that's why, if we are going to avoid more situations like this, we need a complete overhaul of how there's access to guns in this country. I have frankly lost count of how many mass shootings I and my colleagues responded to when I was at the Department of Homeland Security. And Jeremiah raises a very important point. As we hear the victim count coming out of Kansas City today, we're hearing about people that were physically injured, whether it be from the shooting itself or an underlying health condition that was exacerbated as they were trying to flee. But how many more children, how many adults will suffer the psychological trauma associated with these incidents? That is really a number that we can't even wrap our heads around. And so in this moment right now, from the federal perspective, in cooperation with state and local law enforcement, I imagine that authorities are working through victim services, not just as it pertains to physical needs associated with the shooting, but also psychological support. And there are various agencies that provide that. We did learn that this is still very much an active situation. And while criminal in nature, because it is an active scene, we should really await more information from officials on the numbers of individuals that were physically injured and what kind of resources the federal government is going to send to the scene, whether from the Office of Gun Violence Prevention, from the Department of Justice, from Health and Human Services to author mental health support and more. We are in a wait-and-see mode in that respect. But again, we do know that despite their best efforts, law enforcement personnel around this country cannot alone solve the gun epidemic.
Sam, such a powerful point that the people who are going to be traumatized by this are among those injured that are not officially captured in that count of 10 to 15 victims at this point. I want to play a little bit of what we heard from Police Chief Stacey Graves at the end of the press conference. She'd walked away from the podium and then had a thought and came back. Here's what she said.
15, one deceased. I don't have a condition on the other gunshot victims. Correct. It's correct.
We don't know how many.
One fire question.
No, I do not.
Because Chief Graves said there
We're going to have a lot of updates later, guys. We got to go inside and gather this information. I appreciate it.
What are the updates, Jake, later?
Well, just look on Twitter.
I just have one. Excuse me. I just have one thing to say. This is not Kansas City. I'm angered by what happened, but I want you to know that the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department and all the law enforcement officers that were there today, that were serving and protecting, did the best that they could, and I'm so proud of them that they ran into danger, getting 2 people into custody, and at the same time rendering life-sustaining aid to those victims. We were here for a safe celebration, and because of 2 bad actors or more, is why we're standing here today. We will recover as a city. My heart goes out to our victim who is deceased, but your police department stands ready, and we are invested in the safety and betterment of Kansas City. Thank you.
We'll send you guys more updates on Twitter, okay? Follow the Twitter account and we'll put the updates.
The police chief saying this is not Kansas City, praising the men and women who ran into danger, but not Kansas City, not Nashville, not Las Vegas, not Sandy Hook, not any of these places that people think it can't happen in their communities for any myriad of reasons. And yet we see those incidents happen over and over again in communities that feel like they couldn't have been possibly plagued by this type of incident. And so, Sam, I want to get your take on what the police chief said and the vulnerabilities that continue to exist everywhere.
Well, unfortunately, this is too many communities. Gun violence is affecting every jurisdiction across the country, and that is not a reflection on the dedication of the men and women in law enforcement. I was responsible for law enforcement policy at the Department of Homeland Security and am in awe of the work that our law enforcement personnel do every day to protect our country. But again, law enforcement alone is not going to get around the gun epidemic. It is too easy to carry a gun into a crowded place. It is too easy to bring a gun into a school. And looking at this from just a law enforcement perspective is not going to be successful. Unfortunately or fortunately, the federal government and state and local governments now have playbooks for situations like this. We know what to do by memory when a situation like this unfolds, who to call, what resources to send, how to deploy, because this happens so frequently. And so all of us are angry, but we need to broaden the aperture here and understand that this is not a law enforcement problem. This is a gun problem, and there's urgent action needed before this happens again.
It's a great point, Sam. The police chief doesn't want this to be Kansas City, but today it is. And tomorrow it may be another part of the country that continues to suffer from shooting violence. We appreciate your insight in helping us understand how, at this early stage, things are still coming together as we report that 2 suspects are in custody. At least 1 person has been confirmed killed after the Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl celebration there in Kansas City, Missouri, concluded with at least 15 other people injured after today's horrific event.
We are learning some new details in addition to the heroism of law enforcement officials that were praised by both the mayor and the police chief. There are reports that actually the two suspects that were in custody, they were aided, or police rather, were aided by fans who were in the area who helped to tackle at least one of those suspects. The police chief said that she had heard about them. Obviously, this is an ongoing investigation, but CBS News has been speaking with people who are around that area who know more about what happened there. And that, I think, is part of this potential turning point, that citizens are getting involved, that they were involved in trying to subdue what now we believe to be was an altercation between these individuals, as opposed to terrorism or any of the other motivations, unfortunately, that
and
we've
just
heard.
momentarily spare a thought for people like Jeremiah Wilson, who spoke to us, a single father who took his daughter, 7 years old, to today's celebration to give her something special. He spoke with us when we appreciate witnesses as well, like him, who are able to share with us their perspectives. Of course, our hearts go out to everyone there in Kansas City.
We're going to bring you more live coverage now from our Kansas City affiliate, KCTV.
Something was happening, because at first it's kind of surreal to be up here and to see the crowd just kind of start rushing. And this is the same time when people are supposed to be leaving, because it's wrapping up. You see them start running. But then when we saw the law enforcement officers, and I mean, they were running into Union Station. They were hopping barricades like hurdles.
How quickly it changed from just a day of celebration to instantly everything was moving. You know, I didn't hear anything up here, but what I could hear is the sirens of the responders as they were rushing down Grand
and the mood
sprinting.
Totally changed.
Oh yeah, all of a sudden everyone was not focused on up here anymore. The focus was entirely down here, of several people running away from Union Station while the police were running towards Union Station. And again, I think it was just that quickness of how the mood changed, whereas we thought everything was fine, and then in a heartbeat it wasn't, and then everything changed after that.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that today was meant to be this big celebration, back-to-back championships, and now the headlines, obviously, everywhere are talking about this shooting, which a mass shooting. More than 4 people got hurt and shot in this. It's very sad. Obviously, still some law enforcement here, but most of the ambulances have actually left. I right now, from my vantage point, can only really point out 1 or 2 off into the distance, and just a few stragglers, but the trickle of folks that were still here from the fans are no longer here. And we've been talking about this like Weston view that we have right here of all of the windows that used to be filled with a bunch of people. It's been kind of eerie seeing the windows with the little kids. They're just kind of like somber faces looking out now.
Yeah, and we still can look down and see police tape that runs from about, we'll call it all across Pershing, from Main Street clear on to the west side of the campus of Union Station, as the police are continuing their investigation. And again, we did get put on a quick little like shelter here at the Westin for when they thought something was going on. Right before our signal cut out, we could see police officers with guns drawn just on the west side. That was lifted shortly thereafter, and everything has been fine here ever since.
And that was going into the parking garage, since obviously we're talking about Crown Center and the hotel connecting through the parking garage system. And so they did actually apprehend somebody in the parking garage, and then it was given the all clear here. So the operations at the Westin, people are checking in, checking out, eating at the restaurant. Things are back to normal here after that all clear was given. But obviously a scary moment right after another scary moment. It just kind of continued, and it trickled. And you could still see, even after, the crews were kind of cleaning up, and I think somebody dropped a broom or something, and you kind of heard a little sound, and immediately all of us, even up here, were kind of a little startled.
Definitely just the way the mood changed instantaneously, guys, and then kind of everyone was on edge here for a little bit. But it seems to have quieted down here a little bit, at least at the Westin, and definitely down here towards Crown Center and the Union Station. It seemed to quiet down here a little bit as well. So we'll go ahead and send it back to Brad and Carolyn back in the studio.
Well, as I look behind you, Bill and Carolina, it looks like it's just barren of people. Vacant, almost.
Yeah. I mean, pretty much. Yeah, I mean, I think it's only really the cleanup staff that's here at Union Station. We have a handful of police officers, but you can kind of spot who the fans were because they were in red. And right now, we don't really see anybody that's a fan out here right now.
Yeah, it's just a lot of leftover streamers and confetti littering the parking lot and the grounds there at Union Station, where just hours ago there was a party for our two-time world champions, and then all of a sudden that changed in a heartbeat.
Yeah, that seems like that was so long ago that we were celebrating a party and celebrating the Kansas City Chiefs and their accomplishments, and now we're talking about heartbreak, tragedy, and sorrow. Bill and Carolina, thank you for your reporting. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, guys. Yeah, we are keeping monitors, though, on all of the area hospitals as well, trying to monitor this number of injured. And we are hearing, again, 1 killed and between 10 and 15 injured now being treated at 3 area hospitals that we know of, 3 potentially in critical condition.
All right, we have some more eyewitness sound that we gathered right after the shooting. Let's listen to that.
This isn't Kansas City, and I don't want the actions of a few to speak for our hometown. We are the heartland, and we obviously wear our hearts on our sleeves, our hearts on our T-shirts, and I really want people to know that this just does not define us.
Well said.
Very well said on this Valentine's Day as we try to celebrate our winning team. We're going to go now to KCTV5's Joe Hennessy. He was there along the parade route earlier today. Joe, did you hear anything where you are? Are you hearing from parade goers?
That sentiment continues here hours later. People saying we need to do better. People telling me here, seems like we just can't do anything in Kansas City anymore. We had that incident with the car driving throughout the parade route years ago, still talked about. Now, a much sadder event happening at such a joyous day. So we're standing here, West Penway and Pershing. And earlier, when we first got here, this is obviously where the parking garage, you have to exit to get out. Obviously, that side is closed with the stage and what was happening with the rally. So people had to leave this way. So when we were first arriving, we started seeing more and more of those cars leaving the garage. It seemed like everything was okay. You feel for those people in their cars because, you know, they hear the shots or they see people running or they see something incredibly tragic, and now they're just sitting in their cars and we see them and we know what they are going through. And it's very unfortunate. A lot of people here saying it's just a sad day overall. It was such a happy day and now it is not. Now I got a different perspective from somebody else who was actually at the rally. He was on the lawn and he said he didn't really hear anything and he didn't see anything. He just saw a bunch of people running either way and just thought, it's kind of weird. I mean, I guess the rally's wrapping up. But then he looked up and he saw the snipers on Union Station aimed and ready to go. And he knew in that moment something's going down. Something is very bad. And then as the morning progressed, or the afternoon progressed, you know, he's learning more and more, just as we are learning more and more. It's very sad, very unfortunate. A lot of people shaken. A lot of people don't really know what to do right now, don't really know how to feel. And it's just very unfortunate, guys.
Yeah, highly unfortunate. Thank you so much for your reporting out there this afternoon. Yeah, we were hearing even from the mayor that he was in that area. He was one of those that was told, get inside Union Station right now. Of course, in the thick of it, you don't know which way to turn.
Don't know which way to go.
You don't know which way is the safer way, right? To go away into Union Station or to run from it. He was one of those told to go into Union Station, others told away. Whatever the case may be, he said as he was running in, he saw officers running towards the danger. Let's listen to what Mayor Quinton Lucas had to say.
When the shooting started, I, like many others, ran for safety. I saw a number of agencies, including the Kansas City Police Department, officers with guns drawn who were running towards danger. We thank them for that. As I was leaving the scene, I saw members of our Kansas City Fire Department administering aid to folks who were seriously injured without concern for the shootings and the challenges that were near them. This is absolutely a tragedy, the likes of which we would have never expected in Kansas City, and the likes of which we will remember for some time. However, I want to say thank you to those who are making sure that we are safe today, those who are investigating this incident, and those who will continue to make sure that those who committed these acts today are brought to justice.
You can clearly hear a saddened Kansas City, Missouri mayor this afternoon, literally an hour after he had just been on stage singing the praises of our fine city. devastating.
Oh, you can hear the disappointment in his face.
Sure can.
You're right. I mean, he'd been on top of the world, and then there he is in front of the media trying to explain what had happened and the tragedy and chaos that ensued.
Different story.
Our Scott Reese is on the ground there, kind of in an area where it kind of looks like you're by yourself now, Scott. So many people have kind of evacuated the area, want to get out of there. You're in an area where so many people wanted to get to earlier today. How times have changed.
Yeah, no doubt, Brad. It was interesting hearing Carolyn a moment ago talking about the reports of how half the people seemed like they were running into Union Station and half the people seemed like they were running out, because that was what was so perplexing when we were watching this in real time, was just this stream of folks really from left to right running into the facility and then exiting out the right side of the building. But yeah, my current vantage point is right across the street, and these were prime seats. I mean, this is where everybody was clamoring to be as they watched the rally this afternoon. And to the left, you can see an area vacated and now taped off with caution tape, crime scene obviously, and so the aftermath is a heck of a lot messier than it otherwise might be. You say, well, garbage after a parade and a rally is obviously nothing crazy, but consider that the people who were in that spot were running, some of them thinking they were running for their lives, and so they had to leave their valuables, they had to leave their backpacks, they had to leave anything that they had with them, and now they can't get back in and probably retrieve some of those items, and they have vacated the area. And even here up on the hill, again, as you look left, right, up, down, you see the aftermath of folks who vacated this entire rally staging area a heck of a lot quicker than they anticipated, and so the remaining garbage and whatnot is probably considerably more than it otherwise might have been under normal circumstances. And again, I'll remind you about the report I had about a half hour ago that those working on the stage and some of the technical folks here at Union Station were told that they can't go back in and get their gear until tomorrow. So again, clearly this pales in comparison to the loss of life and the injured and the wounded, but still so many ancillary issues here that are going to have to be cleaned up literally and figuratively in the coming days.
All right. Thank you, Scott. You know, there had been members of the media, someone from the NFL Network posted on Twitter or on X saying that he had to take cover underneath the stage,
like
and had no idea what was going on. But it was, you know, a moment of sheer terror and panic about what is happening. Is that gunfire? Is that fireworks? What's going on? And then you see people running around, scurrying, trying to evacuate, trying to flee, and then you don't know where to go. Can't imagine how terrifying that was for so many people down there, for so many people.
Thousands upon thousands of people in that area at that time. Of course, I'm sure some people across the way didn't know what was going on, probably didn't hear a thing.
No idea.
But those in the thick of it is who we're hearing from now. Let's listen into another witness who was in that immediate vicinity.
At first, I just felt people pushing me. I look back and I'm like, hey, can you stop pushing us? And she's like, you guys gotta jump over. There's a shooter. So I'm like the first person to jump over. And then we try to help our mom over. It took all of us to push her over, honestly.
And then my sister had to help me because I'm pregnant, so I couldn't get over on my own. So I literally had to have her holster me over to get over the gate and then help my mother over.
It's really like a scary experience because I'm looking around for my family, and it's not just me in the experience. It's my mother, my pregnant sister, my little sister, my older brother. So I'm over here trying to push everybody through. I got my pregnant sister over. I'm like, where's my mom? That's the first thing I'm worried about. I'm not even worried about myself. I'm worried about my mom. So me and my brother, we try and get my mom over the gate. But as soon as we get over the gate, they're still pushing. There's still people shooting. They're over here like, oh yeah, you guys need to go. There's people actively shooting. So we're scared. We're over here trying to find somewhere to go, and we're going inside the building. And as soon as we're going inside the building, there's people gathering like, oh, they're still shooting. There's still people shooting out there.
Oh, my gosh. The chaos. She's talking about worried about her mother. Her sister is pregnant. We saw Neil Jones was showing us very near where the shooting happened, where there was an empty wheelchair that someone who had been in a wheelchair, don't know if they got up and ran, if they were forced to run, or if
carried away.
We don't know what happened to them, right. But it just goes to show you what was happening there in that moment of complete confusion. People not sure what's happening, but then you have people who couldn't get out of the way, people who are pregnant, people who just aren't very mobile. Absolutely chaotic day in Kansas City.
And keep in mind, for the parade itself, the whole point was to make sure that the players could come down that street unobstructed by fans. So there was these stanchions built all the way down Grand, from 6th and Grand almost to Union Station,
right,
and then even into Union Station. I know the stanchion she's talking about, trying to get Mom over one of those would not be easy for any of us.
No. And especially when you have other people running and screaming and you don't know what's happening. And then was that a gunshot I heard?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's we continue to hear from so many people who were there on the ground, who were so near it. We're going to keep checking back in with our crews on the ground and with so many of you who are out there who may now be home and have tuned into KCTV5 to figure out what happened during that championship celebration. Our Grace Smith has been covering the parade since it started. Grace, tell us where you are now and what you've seen throughout this tumultuous day.
Yeah, Brad, currently I am at Children's Mercy Hospital, where we know patients are being treated, young patients. However, police chief did tell us that she believes that no children were shot, but we know young patients are being treated here, injured somehow during the parade. Now, we also know University Health is currently treating 12 patients, 4 with gunshot wounds. The other 8 suffered from other injuries during the parade. And we also know KCFD rushed 10 of the injured people to University Health, including the victim who died. And we also know other local hospitals are treating patients, and we are working to get those answers, those numbers to you shortly. But this is just tragic. So many injured people from what was supposed to be a fun day, guys.
Boy, you're right about that. Grace, thank you.
Our Brian Hennessy also caught up with some witnesses who are right there near the stage at the time. Let's listen in. Oh, we'll get to that here momentarily. But again, we are confirming now, if you're just now tuning in, potentially just now getting home from the parade and from the rally, thankful that you are home because chaos broke out in front of the stage, southwest corner of the stage there in front of Union Station, just as the rally was ending. And now we are confirming that one person is dead and potentially up to 15 people are hurt. Grace was saying some of them, children, not shot, but injured somehow in the chaos that happened after the shooting. And then, you know, others very critically injured, 3 critical, in fact, and 5 have what is considered serious injuries.
We do know that Mayor Quentin Lucas and
Hello, everyone. I'm Major Garrett in Washington. We are continuing to follow the breaking news out of Kansas City, Missouri, where one person has been killed and several others wounded in a shooting near the Kansas City Chiefs football team's championship Super Bowl parade. At least 10 people were taken to hospitals in the area. Kansas City police say that 2 suspects have been detained and remain in custody. Officials say that was possibly the shooting, that is, related to an argument that turned violent. The shooting, authorities now say, does not appear to be related to terrorism or extremism, at least in terms of motives. I want to bring in now Sam Vinograd. Sam is a CBS News contributor and former Assistant Secretary for Counterterrorism, Threat Prevention, and Law Enforcement Policy for the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Sam, there is lots to go over here, but your big picture thoughts on what we have seen unfolding. And one thing it bears pointing out, we can now add Super Bowl celebratory parades to the places in America once assumed safe from gun violence that now can no longer be assumed to be safe from gun violence.
Major, I've lost count of how many mass shootings I've responded to, and the lesson is very clear. Nowhere is safe from gun violence at this point, and that's not because law enforcement is not doing everything possible to safeguard the American people. In this case, we look at this parade, over 800 law enforcement personnel from a range of federal entities and otherwise, and still what appears to be a personal dispute turned violent and hurt so many victims.
And let's talk about this kind of event. You know, because of your experience, how Kansas City Police and its cooperative other agencies in the area planned for this. It's an outdoor event. It's the culmination of a parade. It has a central location, but it's not a place where magnetometers can be deployed. You have to assume and you hope as a planning law enforcement entity that people are not going to break out their weapons and start shooting one another. But you have to assume that is at least a possibility. Therefore, then you have to intervene and then try to get people safely out. Complex situation.
Complex situation. I will say that law enforcement personnel try to plan for a variety of contingencies, including a dispute that breaks out at a mass entity event like a parade. But unfortunately, there's just too many unknown circumstances that can unfold, like this one. So while law enforcement more than likely tried to prepare for a situation like this, they can't cover every single circumstance that can break out. So, for example, in this case, if a shooting breaks out in a parking garage, you can't account for exactly how people are going to flee, what underlying health conditions people may have as they're trying to escape from violence. And that's where you start seeing more casualties, more psychological trauma, and ultimately more of a catastrophe for the community.
Some basics of this event. The crowd estimated around 1 million. Dignitaries there, the mayor of Kansas City, Quentin Lucas, the governor of Missouri, Mike Parsons, and his wife. All of the Kansas City Chiefs players, personnel, all of them escaped safely. But as the mayor said in the first press conference, and I want to let our audience know, 6 o'clock Eastern time, there is scheduled to be another update from local authorities in Kansas City. We will, of course, bring that to you live. But the mayor said he had to run, felt in danger. Some of those who were covering the event for the NFL Network have put on social media that they ducked and covered underneath the stage. Lots of people ran pell-mell in various different directions. Among the injured, maybe those not shot, but injured fleeing. All of this goes to the very nature of panic that justifiably ensues when gunshots break out in a crowded area.
Most certainly, and I will say that for a situation like a Super Bowl parade, there are various different security perimeters that are set up based upon proximity to VIPs, proximity to the parade itself. So, for example, while a parking garage is, of course, associated with the parade, there may have been different security protocols in place for that particular area. Now, inspection, looking for people with guns, pat-downs, non-intrusive inspection techniques are used for certain mass density events. We don't know if they were in place for any of the perimeters here, but this did happen seemingly on the margins of the parade, but close enough that there were a variety of individuals nearby.
So those in the audience who may watch crime shows or watch a spy movie or two might know the term eyes on for that area nearest Union Station where the dignitaries are. Would you assume in the planning, we don't know, and I'm not asking you to confirm anything, but would you assume there would be some manner of eyes on at least that part of the parade and celebratory area?
Well, this doesn't appear to be a matter of eyes on, and I do think we should wait to see how the investigation unfolds. But in this case, we don't know if the individuals who perpetrated the shootings, for example, had concealed carry licenses. We don't know how these weapons made their way into the parking garage, whether they were visible at any point over the course of the day or not. What we do know is that there's one deceased and many more injured physically, not to mention the psychological trauma. I do imagine that we will learn more about the suspects in, if not the press conference that's happening later tonight, over the following hours. Right now, what's happening, Major, is a huge degree of cooperation to give medical assistance, to investigate what's happened, and to get psychological support resources to individuals that were impacted, both from federal entities as well as state and local ones.
When there is an event of this nature and everyone is converging to try to find motives and eliminate the ones that are most frightening as rapidly as possible, meaning terrorism or extremism, how is that done? How is that process built out so authorities can look to the public and say, well, we've eliminated this, we've eliminated that?
Well, typically when a suspect is apprehended or when there is a lead on a suspect, that suspect's identity is run through various data sets to see if they have any known terrorism-related links, if they have an arrest record. Then at times there's open source investigation that's done on an individual's social media to say if they've used any rhetoric that suggests that they have a tie to terrorism. In other cases, witness testimony can flag what ensued, how an altercation may or may not have broken out, what was said that led to guns being drawn. So it's a variety of different investigatory techniques that are used to help ascertain motive.
Sam, stay with me, please. I want to bring in Ed O'Keefe, who is our senior White House and political correspondent, joining us from the North Lawn of the White House. Ed, what can you tell us about the briefing given to the president, such as you know about it, or any other details from the White House perspective?
So many times, Ranger, we've had to repeat these words that, in fact, the White House is monitoring the situation and providing federal assistance to state and local authorities. That's what's happened again here today. President learned about it this afternoon. There is an Office of Gun Violence Prevention that's been established by this administration that tracks these kinds of incidents and provides assistance to communities should they need it. In this case, it being a larger city and a larger event, there would have been more federal eyes on this event anyway. So it's unclear, at least so far, and we've asked what that new office has been up to today in responding and monitoring to this situation. But as you said, it's yet another incident and another kind of mark of American society that's had to deal with gun violence today. And in watching the coverage throughout the day, you could just see how upsetting this was for Kansas City Chiefs fans and those that were in attendance to have to know that at the end of it, it ended this way.
Yeah, as I'm sure you took note, the mayor of Kansas City said, "I'm angry." The police chief of Kansas City said, "I'm angry." The police chief, Stacey Graves, said, "This is not Kansas City." It may not be, and I certainly, having traveled to Kansas City many times, know that it's not Kansas City writ large, but it happened nonetheless. And I know that when I covered the Obama White House at times like this, and I'm sure you feel it at the Biden White House, there is a sense of powerlessness at moments like this.
Absolutely, and you know, it's something that they've had to respond to too many times over the last 3 years or so. It's part of why they stood up that new Office of Gun Violence Prevention to help communities, not only in the immediate aftermath of one of these shootings, but over the several weeks or months after. And they're more, I think, more focused on assisting places like Uvalde, Texas, or other smaller communities that may have suddenly seen this kind of mass violence occur. Not to diminish at all the importance or the seriousness of what happened in Kansas City today, but to provide resources to places that may not be as prepared for what comes after this kind of violence. So we'll see if we hear anything more from the president or the White House through the rest of tonight or tomorrow. But again, as I said at the beginning, it was the sort of typical White House response, which is we're aware of it, we're monitoring it, we've offered assistance, and we're obviously upset about what transpired.
Ed O'Keefe at the North Lawn of the White House for us. Thanks so much. Sam, I want to go back to you. So, as you know from your experience in government, events like this reshape future events like this. So the next time there's going to be a Super Bowl parade, there's going to be a different approach, right?
Well, we unfortunately use these mass casualty events to inform security planning going forward. What I will say that right now, focused on the right now, the federal government is certainly offering support to state and local authorities. But in a moment like this, we often knew that state and local authorities were focused on actively stabilizing the scene and making sure that any injuries were contained. So in the coming hours, in the next day, we may hear more specifics from the White House about what resources are being sent at the federal level. We have to keep in mind this shooting just occurred. The state and local authorities are really focused on getting medical support to those impacted and stabilizing the scene. So there's a lot we don't know right now. And as we move through the night, I would imagine we'll hear more from the White House about what they're providing. I work closely with the Office of Gun Violence Prevention. They provide resources all across the country to help make communities more resilient in the aftermath of an attack like this, while the security professionals will carefully examine what vulnerability allowed this contingency to occur so that we try to avoid it happening again.
Sam Vinograd, thank you so very much for all your expertise. And also our thanks to Ed O'Keefe in the North Lawn of the White House. We will have more on the response to the Kansas City shooting when we come back. You're streaming America Decides.
Well, let me start with this.
This really happened.
Have you told the government?
Did any of that make sense?
What's your response?
You want me to just
What's
keep
wrong
going?
with that argument?
What have you learned?
Do you know why?
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 It's time for 60 Minutes, Sunday on CBS.
An
original documentary from CBS Reports.
Since you started La Soup in 2014, do you have any sense as to how much food you've rescued from the landfill?
We've rescued 4.5 million pounds.
I can't even fathom how much food that is.
And that's one little person in one little city in America. We're going to call this chicken piccata. We did 450 of these meals today.
This is the exact dish
That
you and
we
I are going to
just-
have.
Yep.
Oh, my good.
Is it good? Mm-hmm. Having a plan of how to keep people fed should be in every single city.
So if we eliminated food waste, could we eliminate
hunger? Yes.
Eating Trash, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
At this moment, terrorists could be plotting another attack.
9/11 triggered a counter-terrorist system that included a secret database.
This person needs a closer look.
A growing list of nearly 2 million people, including some Americans who say they're innocent.
For 1 hour flight, I have to spend 6 hours to go and come back.
CBS Reports explores the system, the people responsible for it, and those pushing for change.
I'm not fighting against them. I'm fighting for them to do the right thing.
The Watch List, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
He was there when the war in Ukraine started.
Extreme history. It's a big moment.
The extraordinary story behind Sean Penn's new Paramount Plus documentary, Superpower, when we go person to person.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
AI is among the most world-changing technologies ever.
Curing diseases, scientific breakthroughs, making lives better.
They can help us with medical discoveries, scientific discoveries, doing better agriculture, having cures for things like Alzheimer's.
It's also going to really transform the way we work.
The uplifting potential of artificial intelligence is limitless.
It gives you a friend, somebody to chat with 24/7 that is non-judgmental. He makes me feel loved and desired.
And so are its downfalls.
The problem with all this AI is that it's unpredictable and uncontrollable. The choices we make now will have lasting effects for decades, maybe even centuries.
The ChatGPT revolution, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
It's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
Human remains found this week.
The mystery would haunt investigators for years.
A gripping true crime original, 48 Hours, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
How can we become our best selves? That may be more about character than talent.
The ultimate mark of your potential is how far you've climbed, not how high you've gone.
Realizing your true potential with Adam Grant as we go person to person.
Welcome back. We are continuing to follow the breaking news out of Kansas City, where one person has been killed in a shooting near the Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl victory parade and celebration. I want to go now to Tiffany Null, who was at the parade. She joins us via Zoom. Tiffany, thank you very much for your time. I don't want to impose upon you in any way. I just want you to say what you remember, how it affected you, and give our audience a sense of what you saw, please.
We were just there having a great time. There were a lot of people, like we were shoulder to shoulder. I was standing on top of a cooler because I couldn't see. And at this point, I had heard, there were so many different noises going on at that point. You didn't really know what was what, but I heard a pop. And then you just heard screaming, and everybody in front of me just started running. And I started yelling, "What's going on? What's going on?" And a woman yelled, "They're shooting! They're shooting!" And I jumped down. The lady next to me, we just started running. And my husband, we turned around and we left everything. And then we didn't get but maybe about 10, 15 feet from our stuff before they started saying, they've got him. And so we stopped and we started, are you sure? Before we started to go back, but everybody was still running and rushing, and everybody was just bumping into each other, and it was just very chaotic.
Tiffany, as you were there and as you were preparing to go to the parade, did you have any sense in your mind? Did you have any anxiety or fear that something like this might happen? Meaning, it is something that has happened in other communities in America. Did you go there with any sense of even low-level anxiety that something like this might occur?
I really didn't. I always try to have like situational awareness.
Mm-hmm.
but I wasn't afraid. You know, we were down. We got there at like 7:30 in the morning to get a good spot, and we knew that we would be right up there with a lot of people. And I never, even at the point where everything happened, I never felt unsafe. So even going into it, I didn't, go in there, and even until the point happened, I didn't feel unsafe.
And you mentioned that you got about 10 or 15 feet from your belongings when you heard they've got him. Did the crowd around you begin to stabilize and things begin to calm down? And were you able to go back? Did you feel safe enough to go back and retrieve your things?
We did. Once a lot of people started saying they got him instead of just one person, that a lot of people were like, they got him. Then we felt a little more, a little better about going back and, grabbing our things and not continuing on, like, getting out of there. We got our stuff, and then you had nowhere to go. You just had nowhere to go. We couldn't go inside a building. We couldn't go. It was just, everything's outdoors, and there's really nowhere to go.
So Tiffany, how did you make your way out? How did you come up with a plan? And did you get any guidance either from others who were around you, who were in the same boat, or from anyone in a position of authority to lead you on a way out?
No, at that point, they got over to the area. The police and the fire department and everybody got over to the area, and they just started blocking off the area and told us what area to not be in. And they kind of like corralled us all over into a certain area, and told us to not go into this other area. Then there was something else going on, like up the street, that was blocked off. So I don't know if that was related to this event or not related to this event. And so we were kind of stuck in the middle of these two events. And so we had to like ask for permission to go through this barricade to be able to go back to our cars. So it just to go back to our cars was a major feat.
I don't doubt it. Before I let you go, Tiffany, a very simple question. Are you glad you went?
I am. I've lived in Kansas City pretty much majority of my life, and I've rooted for the Chiefs, the whole time, and I've celebrated this, and this is something that I wanted to experience. Is this something that I wanted to happen? Absolutely not. Will it stick with me? Yeah. The looks on people's faces as they were running, the terror on their faces, I won't soon forget. But I'm glad that I went and celebrated our victory with our whole city.
Tiffany Null, thank you so very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
CBS News congressional correspondent Scott McFarland joins us now from Capitol Hill. Scott, always good to see you. What have you heard from members of Congress this afternoon?
We're in this ether on gun control issues in Congress, and it's almost like it goes through this choreography or this synchronization of responses after each mass shooting. Democrats and the Brady campaign to reduce gun violence put out these announcements saying we need to do something legislatively at the federal level to reduce the risk and the frequency of shootings. And you have, to some degree, a bit of silence from those who advocate gun rights after each mass shooting. And I'll note this, Major, from our CBS News reporting. There are these discharge petitions. We've heard these referenced in the past few days discussing how do we get something on the floor to aid Ukraine. There are several pending discharge petitions right now on the issue of gun control that, because they don't have 218 signatures, just sit there in that ether. There's an unfortunate rhythm that we're getting accustomed to that keeps beating along.
I was looking that up just yesterday, Scott. I believe there are 8 discharge petitions that have been filed, if my math and memory is correct, and there's always some problems there. 6 of the 8 are related to gun violence mitigation measures. Scott, while I have you, I want to turn your attention and our audience attention ever so briefly to a somewhat significant development in House Democratic leadership regarding Jim Clyburn.
No longer going to be a part of leadership, but he is going to run for re-election. Jim Clyburn, who has for so long been a part of House Democratic leadership and was the one who stayed on after Nancy Pelosi and Steny Hoyer stepped back. Well, he's stepping back now, too. There's actually not enough leadership positions for everybody in the House Democratic caucus who wants one. He's not leaving a void that necessarily needs to be filled in terms of a post, but his institutional memory and the heft he brings is something that Democrats can't really replace, but a succession plan is clearly in effect here for House Democrats, and this is another piece of it.
Scott McFarland on Capitol Hill, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
I want to take you back to our affiliate in Kansas City for their continuing coverage of the shooting there.
Reporting from our Betsy Webster.
So the kids did have gunshot injuries, is what she's hearing. Okay.
Oh, Children's Mercy, 9 gunshot victims, at least 8 of them kids. So your heart sinks when you hear something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the numbers keep rising. Sadly, when we first came to you here at 2 o'clock, we were hearing, a couple people hurt, and we thought it would end there. And these numbers keep rising.
Just keep rising.
It is devastating. News to report to you. We're going to stay on the air with you here as we continue to kind of, like I said, put this horrifying puzzle together and find the different pieces that help us make some sense of it. What we were hearing initially, what we continue to hear, it seems, from many of these witnesses, that started as an argument between 2 people. Apparently, both of them had guns. As the police chief called them, 2 bad actors that made our victory play, if you will, a very tragic day.
Tragic indeed, no doubt about it. So we've had crews all over on the ground. We've been talking to so many people, talking to so many eyewitnesses, the mayor, the police chief, and everyone. You can just tell, trying to wrap their heads around this. I don't use the word shocking very often. I don't like that word because very few times are we literally shocked in this world. This is for those people who were there and for what this was planned and the joy and excitement that was going on. What a shocking development to have gunfire break out, and not just a shot or 2, but multiple shots.
In rapid fire.
In rapid fire that did end up hitting multiple people. One person has died. Their family will be planning a funeral. All of the first responders who were there now unpacking what happened in the midst of trying to investigate what happened, and then trying to figure out how to go forward in that investigation. Haven't even really got to the chiefs and their families and the dignitaries that were there, who they were mere yards away from where this happened. I mean, so much to unpack here, and none of it is fun. The parade was fun. The rally was fun. Everything afterwards has been utter chaos, and now it's turned to heartbreak and sorrow.
Yeah, it's a dark cloud over what was to be a fabulous victory for our city and for our favorite team. Let's hear now from some more eyewitnesses that we've been talking to throughout the now evening hours to get their perspective.
We were standing on a wall, to the east side.
We are going to take a quick break, but we will be right back with more of our continuing coverage of the Kansas City shooting near the Chiefs Super Bowl parade. Stay with us.
Hey there, welcome to The Uplift.
I thought she was a groom, and I stepped back and I went, oh, you're the queen. She's going to be with me every instant that I'm alive.
I just wanted to see if you'd go to Disneyland with me today.
I look over at him and he's smiling.
I'm going to remember that the rest of my life.
They told us when he was going to be born, he was only going to live for 30 minutes. It's really a miracle that he's with us today.
The Uplift. Stream now on the free CBS News app.
There is no more room in our city.
New York City is receiving record numbers of migrants.
Today, we're going to have more than 500 adults and children come through that door.
Tensions rise as shelters reach max capacity.
We don't have to take care of them.
CBS Reports goes inside a crisis cities and families are facing as they fight to survive.
The United States still has a glimmer of hope for people to come here.
Fighting for a future. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
She's a country music legend, philanthropist, fashion icon, and now rock star.
I think there's a lot to be said about being comfortable with who you are.
Find out what's next for Dolly Parton when we go person to person.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
That desired farm is a wonderful place to raise children, and it still is.
Promises broken.
Black Americans have been the target of racism and discrimination pretty much from the time they acquired ownership in the land.
Costing black farmers hundreds of billions in generational wealth.
They did everything to make sure we were run off that land.
But communities are uniting to continue the fight.
Collective ownership is powerful.
To keep their land and their dreams alive.
To watch my children play on land that we own means everything.
So land is power.
Most definitely.
40 Acres and a Mule, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
She is a beloved American icon and head of a media empire. But is Oprah Winfrey happy? How do you define happiness?
Yeah, I call it happierness.
Find out when we go person to person.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
It was genocide, a deliberate effort by the United States government to eliminate the food source that was relied upon by Native American tribes.
American bison were slaughtered and Native Americans displaced.
And that's how tribes were subjugated to reservations and our lands were taken.
But now, through conservation efforts at Yellowstone,
Buffalo provided everything that we needed. Now they need help.
a herd grows.
We need to step up and help them.
And a culture is reborn.
When the buffalo return and come back, that's when our tribe will begin to heal.
Yellowstone Bison Revival, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
I'm a voracious consumer of information and news. I am constantly curious and constantly want to learn. I know I personally want to know the basic facts of every issue and to press into the heart of the matter. Information is the currency of democracy, and that's what we bring to the table every Sunday.
I'm Major Garrett in Washington. We are continuing, as we have for several hours now, following breaking news out of Kansas City, Missouri, where at least one person was killed in a shooting near the Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl victory parade this afternoon. And we are awaiting the second press conference of this afternoon from Kansas City authorities, and they promised to provide an update not only on what happened, but how many people were injured and the severity of those injuries, if they can. Multiple people we do know were injured in this incident. Kansas City police have 2 people in custody. Officials say that based on what they know so far, this incident was related to an argument that turned violent and not motivated, so far as they can tell, by extremism or terrorism. We want to take you back to our affiliate in Kansas City, that is KCTV, for their continuing coverage.
The Chiefs did their parade. They took the stage. They were celebrating. We love listening to Travis Kelce and Patrick. They were having a fantastic time, and so were all the fans, not only at the celebration, but the fans who were watching on KCTV5.
Then is when we heard the shots fired, or at least that's what we're hearing. Shots fired just before 2 o'clock this afternoon. People began to run away from the scene as police began basically to run towards the sounds of that gunfire to try to stop these alleged shooter or shooters.
Yeah, police tell us that they have taken 2 armed gunmen in custody earlier today. Sadly, one person is dead. At least up to 15 to 18 are now. That number continues to fluctuate, but as many as 18 now. That might go up past the 14 that you see on your screen. They were taken to multiple hospitals, including Children's Mercy. We don't know the ages of the victims. At a news conference earlier today, Police Chief Stacey Graves denounced the shooting.
I just have one thing to say. This is not Kansas City. I'm angered by what happened, but I want you to know that the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department and all the law enforcement officers that were there today, that were serving and protecting, did the best that they could, and I'm so proud of them that they ran into danger, getting 2 people into custody, and at the same time rendering life-sustaining aid to those victims. We were here for a safe celebration, and because of 2 bad actors or more is why we're standing here today. We will recover as a city. My heart goes out to our victim who is deceased, but your police department stands ready, and we are invested in the safety and betterment of Kansas City.
Now, that was the police chief of Kansas City, Missouri, speaking at the very first press conference that they held after this happened. We're actually waiting now to hear from her once again with further updates, also hoping to hear from the mayor a little more shortly as well, if he is going to join her again. He, just as heartbroken as she is, clearly, that this puts such a mark on our city. Patrick Mahomes, you were talking about him, just one of the many players posting on Twitter, on Facebook this afternoon. Patrick saying, praying for Kansas City with 3 prayers.
And as I kind of filter through social media posts and try to get a feel for what people are focusing on, it's now that we're finding out that there are so many kids involved. You can just tell on social media that that's what's kicking people in the gut right now.
Oh,
that of all the people, look, clearly one person hurt is terrible. 1 person is dead, and several kids are in hospitals right now.
Shooting victims.
Shooting victims. We don't know their conditions. We hope for the best for these kids who are all probably wearing Chiefs gear, who went to the parade with their mom and dad, and here they are now.
We're just about to head home.
We're just about to head home, and what would have been a fabulously memorable day and a day they'll never forget. Well, now they'll never forget for another reason, sadly. All right, our crews have been out gathering, talking with people since this happened. Here's more of what we heard.
We were sitting at a table at the Crown Center bar, and the ladies in front of us all of a sudden turned around and started pointing. We turned around, and everybody out in that courtyard in front of the bar they were flying everywhere. And then people around us were diving to the ground, so we started running down a hallway, and there were a bunch of kids, and my sister and I were running, telling them, get down, get down. It's scary. Scary. I mean, just it's scary. This doesn't happen in Kansas City, you know?
Obviously, you guys were trying to look out for other people. Were there kids there, and kind of what was the reaction from them?
Well, there are lots of kids and their parents, and you just kind of, I don't know. I think you realize if you don't know what to do, you think you should be prepared all the time, and all of a sudden you realize you're just probably doing stupid stuff and just trying to just run. Just run. It's so stupid. The whole thing is so stupid because you just don't know what you should never have to prepare for this. I feel sorry for the people that were all outside. I feel like we made really good decisions to end up in the bar and not down in the crowd. But yeah.
Have they said everything? Because I can ask you a different question. Okay, so obviously this is supposed to be a parade, it's supposed to be everything, and this is kind of like worst case scenario. I mean, it's really unfortunate.
Yeah, it was really sad, and what was sad is, we seen these kids that came in, and they came flying in, all these young kids came flying in, and they didn't have any adult supervision, and so they all came in and were really scared, and they were all sitting there at the booth, and I went over and I asked them, I said, you guys all okay? And, I said, have you all called your parents and told them that you were all okay? And they said, yeah, we did that. And I said, okay, because, it was very scary. Everybody was down on the ground, and then we got up and tried to refocus, it was awful.
Oh, those poor kids. And keep in mind, many Kansas City area school districts made that decision to let school out for the day today. Not all, but most. And so there were many, many children there for that rally today, the parade and the rally both.
Yeah, Neil Jones has talked about, he was 35 feet away from where the shooting happened, and he used the two words, sheer terror. And then you hear from those eyewitnesses when you hear about the kids who heard and saw what was going on. They go off running. They're in a panic. It's what a frightening day. Speaking of Neil Jones, Neil is still on the scene. Neil, you've been reporting all afternoon. Let's go back to you again.
It happened a little more than 3 hours ago, right down there on that intersection at Pershing and Kessler. It was just maybe 150 yards away from the stage where Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs had just received their trophy and been in front of the crowd. Photographer Greg Malone and I were moving into the intersection to interview some fans to talk about what a wonderful night it was. Instead, we heard what we now know is shots. This is the video that Greg Malone shot at that moment. We didn't know if it was firecrackers, but the crowd's reaction told us this is more than fireworks. They were terrified. Youngsters, parents with their older parents, with the children, trying to find a way away from whatever was going down. Then as we got into the intersection, we saw at least 2 victims on the ground. Greg Malone, our photographer, said that there were 2 different people that they treated with CPR right there on the ground in the moments after the shooting. Meanwhile, law enforcement were coming in from every direction to determine who had done the shooting and to get them on the ground. They apprehended a man. Another person who was down there, but not in uniform, said he's one of the suspects. It took a couple of officers to subdue him. They took him into an area and treated him for possible wounds, and then carted him off in handcuffs, it looked like to me, but it certainly his hands behind his back, and he was subdued. Whether he's a suspect or not, we don't know. Then they began to treat people on the ground. They took one person away instantly, almost instantly, because of the severity of their injuries, on a cart, and took them to an ambulance that was off to the side a bit. At this time, people are still coming into the area. They've known something has happened, but they were on the other side of Union Station. They didn't know exactly what it was. And when they found out, they began to run. So for a period of about 15 minutes, it was a very fluid situation with a lot of fear. Nobody knew if the gunman or multiple gunmen were on the loose. All they could do was try to get their family to safety and get their children out of that situation. All in all, just a horrible end to what had been a glorious day here in Kansas City.
Yeah, should have been, and it was up until that moment. Neil, thank you for your reporting this afternoon. It has been,
Well, he was he was an eyewitness, more than a reporter. He was right there in the middle of it. He and photographer Greg Malota, we're glad they're okay. Our hearts are broken. For those who are in the hospital right now, I continue to follow on social media, and I'm hearing from people who are now saying, yeah, I have family members in the hospital. So Chiefs Kingdom coming together in grief now that this triumphant day has turned into tragedy. And, everyone's asking why, and we're looking for answers, and there are no answers right now. All we can do is listen to the police authorities and try to ascertain, what happened through their investigation. Although it is still very, very, very early, we are waiting for another news conference with the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department. It was supposed to happen at 5 o'clock. It's 5:10 right now. These things are very fluid, so we'll continue to stay with you here on KCTV5 to cover every single angle of what has been such a tumultuous day in downtown Kansas City on what should have been a shining day. Instead, it is now overshadowed by sadness.
Yeah, senseless is the best word you've used so far. Absolutely senseless. And the best thing we can do for you at home is to talk to as many of you who were there to help us try to explain what exactly happened today to end the day so badly. So let's hear from some more eyewitnesses.
We're traveling from Wichita, Kansas today, so about two and a half hour hike down the road, come up to celebrate for the big game, brought the family with us, and we had friends in town. So we had about 10, 15 of us on the lawn up here, wives and children, and, all the kids running around. And about the time you hear shooting anywhere when you're with family, your first instinct as a parent or anybody is, protect those around you. So we started grabbing the kids and, running for cover at that point along with everybody else in the crowd, plus the big rush of the crowd moving backwards. I mean, there was a good chunk of people down here today, so just getting out of the way of that rush of people coming in, you wanted to move too. So everybody retreated back pretty quick, and at least everybody's safe and sound on this side, and prayers to everybody that didn't get out of here safe and sound.
Well, yeah, absolutely. One of the biggest fears in massive crowds like this, where you're shoulder to shoulder like that, is getting trampled. And that apparently has happened to several people today, and some injuries resulted from that. We have heard also from Sharice Davids. Let's go ahead and take a look at what she has sent out in this statement, saying, "Words cannot describe the pain and shock we are feeling as a joyous day turned into tragedy right in our community." End quote. "My heart is with the victims' families, and I pray for the quick recovery of those injured. I appreciate the bravery and coordination of the law enforcement officers, first responders, and healthcare workers for ensuring a swift, orderly evacuation and caring for the victims. Though our community stands together in the present, the traumatic memories of today will stick with children, families, and community members for far too long. This does not reflect the spirit of Kansas City, and I support those asking for a change to ensure a brighter and safer future." She very much echoing what the mayor of Kansas City has also said today, is that something must be done to try to stop this from happening.
And the reality is that last year there were more homicides in Kansas City than at any other point in Kansas City's history. So there's that.
There is that, and there is that knowledge of that Kansas City has a horrible homicide rate compared to other cities. And then while the spotlight is on us for a winning world champion team, this is what we show them.
Yeah, I can appreciate the fact that we want people to look at our community and say, wow, look at Kansas City. They're champions, world champions. But we can't hide the fact that we do have a violence problem in Kansas City. And again, our homicide rate was the highest ever in 2023. And I believe we already have...
We're going to take a quick break away from our affiliate KCTV's coverage in Kansas City. We'll be right back with more of our continuing coverage of the shooting in Kansas City near the champion Chiefs Super Bowl parade.
Well, let me start with this.
This really happened.
Have you told the government?
Did any of that make sense?
What's your response?
You want me to just
What's wrong with that argument?
What have you learned?
Do you know why?
Why? Why?
It's time for 60 Minutes, Sunday on CBS.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
Since you started La Soup in 2014, do you have any sense as to how much food you've rescued from the landfill?
We've rescued 4.5 million pounds.
I can't even fathom how much food that is.
And that's one little person in one little city in America. We're going to call this chicken piccata. We did 450 of these meals today.
This is the exact dish that you and I are going to have.
Yep.
Oh, really good.
Is it good? Mm-hmm. Having a plan of how to keep people fed should be in every single city.
If we eliminated food waste, could we eliminate
hunger? Yes.
Eating Trash, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
At this moment, terrorists could be plotting another attack.
9/11 triggered a counter-terrorist system that included a secret database.
This person needs a closer look.
A growing list of nearly 2 million people, including some Americans who say they're innocent.
For 1 hour flight, I have to spend 6 hours to go and come back.
CBS Reports explores the system, the people responsible for it, and those pushing for change.
I'm not fighting against them. I'm fighting for them to do the right thing.
The Watch List, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
He was there when the war in Ukraine started.
Extreme history. It's a big moment.
The extraordinary story behind Sean Penn's new Paramount Plus documentary, Superpower, when we go person to person.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
AI is among the most world-changing technologies ever.
Curing diseases, scientific breakthroughs, making lives better.
They can help us with medical discoveries, scientific discoveries, doing better agriculture, having cures for things like Alzheimer's.
It's also going to really transform the way we work.
The uplifting potential of artificial intelligence is limitless.
It gives you a friend, somebody to chat with 24/7.
that is non-judgmental. He makes me feel loved and desired.
And so are its downfalls.
The problem with all this AI is that it's unpredictable and uncontrollable.
The choices we make now will have lasting effects for decades, maybe even centuries.
The ChatGPT revolution, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
It's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
Human remains found this week.
The mystery would haunt investigators for years.
A gripping true crime original, 48 Hours, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
How can we become our best selves? That may be more about character than talent.
The ultimate mark of your potential is how far you've climbed, not how high you've gone.
Realizing your true potential with Adam Grant as we go person to person.
Major Garrett in Washington. We will get back to our continuing coverage of the mass shooting outside of the Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl parade in just a moment. We'll be doing that with our affiliate there, KCTV. But just to set the scene, we are awaiting two separate press conferences, one from Kansas City Police, which could happen at any moment, and then very soon thereafter, one from one of the hospitals in Kansas City treating victims of the shooting, not only those who were victimized by the shooting itself, but may have been injured in the pandemonium that followed. But let's now go back to the continuing coverage provided in Kansas City by our affiliate, KCTV.
As well. So we don't know the exact numbers with that, but we know 9 children fall under that category. So
devastating. Grace, thank you.
Yeah.
And as soon as you have anything new or anything else to report, let us know. We'll get right back to you immediately. So just grave numbers coming out of this.
The worst of which is one confirmed dead at this point, and at least 3 of these numbers allegedly in critical condition at this point. So we, along with the mayor and the police chief and the rest of the Chiefs players, send our prayers to these families who are dealing with this emotional toll tonight as they await for word on how their family members are doing.
Yeah, and we keep waiting, just like you are, for the latest word. Kansas City, Missouri police were supposed to hold a briefing to update us on what happened. That was supposed to happen at 5 o'clock. It's now about 5:19 right now, so we'll continue to wait as they are gathering evidence and gathering information and talking to eyewitnesses. So many people involved today, and it doesn't, you think about the people who were right around the shooting, but then you have so many people, as we heard from the one eyewitness who was in his condo, who was up above looking down. He had a vantage point. He could hear and see what was going on. So many people reliving this moment of that gunfire. What could we have done differently? What should I have been somewhere else? What should I have run a different way? So many people now trying to process what happened during that horrible time when there was rapid fire of gunshots being fired. We don't know what type of a gun it was. Eyewitnesses say it sounded like it may have been a semi-automatic gun, but clearly there was a rapid succession of bullets being fired, as many as 15 to 20, and that kind of follows in line with how many injured that we have here, people who are in the hospital right now struggling with injuries, 1 confirmed dead. It's been a bloody day in Kansas City, and there's no other way to paint it.
And if you're just now tuning in and learning of this and wondering where exactly this happened, as you were looking at the stage, it would have been to the left-hand corner of the stage. And as you were mentioning, there were seats set out front, in front of that rally stage. And so that's where presumably all the dignitaries would be, and that is exactly in the area where this would have happened. There are many, many eyewitnesses, no doubt. We are hearing from just a few, but no doubt literally hundreds, if not thousands, at least heard something wasn't right.
Yeah. All right, we're being told that we're very close to this news conference that's going to happen just within the next couple of minutes. So stay with us. We're going to get the very latest updates from Chief Stacey Graves about the terrible, tragic events that unfolded right outside of Union Station following, right toward the very end, just as the celebration had ended. The Chiefs players were getting ready to file off stage. People were having so much fun. The weather was perfect. The sun was shining.
I mean, it was all coming together.
people were getting ready to continue their celebration. But here we go. Here's Mayor Q and Chief Stacey Graves.
Kansas City police are giving an update on a shooting near the Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl victory parade. Let's take a listen to the mayor of Kansas City, Quentin Lucas.
Things will continue to change throughout the night. That's why we are here to give you an update right now. The chief, both chiefs, will be giving more information both on the numbers of victims, the status of victims. The chief of police will give more updates on the investigation. A few things to note that we talked about earlier. In terms of who was in danger, what existed, it is my view, as someone who did have to run at the sound of shooting, that there were a number of people who were, in the very least, caught up in the incident in some way. Myself, my wife, lots of families, players, chief staff, and others, their spouses, their families, a number of people who were in or near Union Station. So many people have been touched by this incident, and we recognize that. We also pray not only for the victims, including the decedent that was discussed earlier and their family, but also the victims of the shootings right now, who we hope are recovering inside our hospitals. We'll continue to give you updated information. At this point, we've talked to our federal partners. We have also talked to the Kansas City Chiefs. We will be talking to the National Football League and others. More so, just to hear that all are safe who are with those institutions, and we continue to hope that all of those who are impacted are safe. To the extent you have information about suspects or others, we do encourage you to call the police. However, if for whatever other reasons you have information about the incident, we will be looking to share that through different methods. So if you have information about the incident, suspects and others, please call the police. If you're looking for other information, we'll try to continue to give you regular updates. I'll say this final thing, and then we'll come back for questions at the end. Today was tragic for everyone who was part of it. I had the chance to talk to my wife just a moment ago, who said we became part of a statistic of too many Americans, those who have experienced or been part of or connected to a mass shooting. That is something that I hope we all recognize is highly problematic for all of us. I continue to commend our police officers, our firefighters, and others who were there to respond instantly. But we also need to figure out a way to make sure that things like this stop happening in our country. With that, I turn it over to the Chief of Police, Stacey Graves.
Thank you. I just want to echo the mayor's thoughts and his prayers, and also to acknowledge that not only the victims who were actually hit by gunfire, but there are a lot more people who are going to be forever impacted by what happened here today. You know, as people were running, you know, a lot of us law enforcement who are running towards the danger also guided those who were in fear of their lives, and that's something to be said of how impactful today's event truly was. Again, we have confirmed there is one deceased person. Our gunshot wound total has went up to 22, and Chief Grundison will provide a little bit more context to that. Right now, we're still working on a total of number of victims. This is still an active investigation. I do want to comment on the question that I got earlier about a video of some fans tackling someone. We do have 3 persons detained and under investigation for today's incident. We are working to determine if one of the 3 are the one that was in that video where fans assisted police. Our investigators are working with all of the surviving victims to connect them with loved ones. We are also working to identify our deceased victim so we can notify their family as soon as possible. We are also in the process of staffing a centralized phone number. This centralized phone number will be for those who are victims, witnesses, and if anyone has video or any information about what led up to what happened here today. Again, we are continuously receiving information minute by minute, which is part of the delay of us coming down here. But I do want to pass this on to Chief Grendison to give a little bit more context to some of the status of our victims.
Just want to say that all of KCFD's thoughts and prayers are with those families that were affected by this tragedy today. And while we were not expecting it, we were ready and prepared for an event such like this. Our KCFD units, along with our mutual aid partners that were working to assist us at this event, touched a total of 22 gunshot victims. One of those was a fatality. We had 8 what we considered immediately life-threatening patients. We had 7 with life-threatening injuries, and we had 6 that had minor injuries. Of the most serious, the immediately life-threatening injuries, we had 8 of those. Those were all transported and off the scene and route to hospitals within 10 minutes. So we felt the response was certainly adequate and appropriate, and I commend all our staff working there today, along with PD, that did an excellent job under difficult circumstances. We transported 3 different hospitals. We transported Children's Mercy, Truman Medical, and also St. Luke's on the Plaza.
Questions? Yeah, so we're getting... Who are you asking? Anyone that can answer the question. So we've heard people talking about gunshots that they've heard near the west side of Union Station, and then also gunfire and situations that happen near the fountain and the stoplight over there near the intersection of Berkshire. Was there 2 separate scenes? Was there one big scene? Do you know the answer to that question?
That is still an active scene. That is a large ground to cover, as you know, the size of the Union Station. I will tell you, we have located that crime scene on the west side of Union Station. As far as in the front of, that is still under investigation. We have crime scene investigators as well as the detectives. We had a lot of our assault squad detectives and our homicide detectives that were actually in uniform today working the assignment. So not only did you have uniformed presence immediately responding to the scene, rendering aid, going towards danger, but you also had detectives that were immediately on the scene that are still there and actively working.
Are you investigating any sort of connection with the earlier shooting of the day at 27th and McLean?
We are, at this time, we don't know if that's connected, but that is something that we are looking at.
Children's Mercy says that they want parents to contact them if they don't know where their children are. Do you know that there may be, are there kids there who
I can tell you we have detectives at all of the local hospitals that are investigating, like I said earlier, trying to connect our victims to their loved ones. Should that be the case and it's a child, someone can either contact police, or if that is what Children's Mercy is requesting, of course they can contact them as well. Right now we do not have a motive, but we are asking those who may potentially have any kind of information, a witness or video, to contact police. That's one of that, what I talked about, that phone number that we're setting up that's going to be centralized for victims, witnesses, and potential video evidence.
Any age range on the person?
I do not have that yet. I have not been able to confirm another death.
You mentioned that there were some victims taken to Children's Mercy Hospital. I understood from staff at Children's Mercy Hospital that they received, they have 9 shooting victims, and it's possible that one of them was an adult. Do you know how many children were shot, if it was 8 or 9? And when we're talking children, are we talking about little ones or 17-year-olds? Do you know, Chief?
Children's accepts patients up to 17 years old. Children's accepts patients up to 17 years old, and but we do not have that information currently on the exact ages of the patients that were transported. Yeah, I mean, Children's confirming we did transport to Children's Mercy, but we do not have the ages of those patients.
Mayor, how scared? You had over 800 officers deployed to work this parade, to work outside of Union Station, and still in a matter of moments, 22 people were shot. I mean, that's what happens with guns. I won't get in a big debate right now. I think we're still doing an investigation, but I mean, what you saw happen was why people talk about guns a lot. We had over 800 officers there, staffed, situated all around Union Station today. We had security in any number of places, eyes on top of buildings and beyond. And there still is a risk to people. And I think that's something that all of us who are parents, who are just regular people living each day, have to decide what we wish to do about it. Parades, rallies, schools, movies, it seems like almost nothing is safe. And we had hundreds of law enforcement there working hard today. And I do want to echo what the chief said. We were running towards danger, but in a matter of seconds, someone who wants to disrupt anything, someone who wants to create any type of situation, or someone who is very simply reckless, can change not just one life or two lives, but almost 24. And that to me is absolutely devastating, and it makes me feel vastly more concerned as a parent just in the world today thinking about that.
Can you just say more about how you were able to detain those two? I'll get you in just a second. Clearly caused so much harm. What was the question? Can you tell us more about how you were able to detain those two suspects into custody? Officers, uniformed officers were on scene. I don't have all the information of exactly what they witnessed, but there was a pursuit, apprehension, slight injuries by our officers taking someone into custody. But as far as you're directly answering your question, I don't have that information right now.
You have two gunmen in custody. If you were talking about weapons earlier, can you tell me how many and what type of weapons?
I don't have the exact on the weapons, but we have recovered firearms. I don't have a number for you or a caliber. We have recovered firearms, at least one.
Okay. You have two gunmen in custody. Do you believe there are any others still unaccounted for?
We have 3 people that we have detained, and that is what we are asking for. Is if anyone has any information, is a witness or has any kind of video that may provide us if there is anybody else that was involved in this.
Does there help with a risk to the community at this point?
No, at this time, the scene has been cleared. It's being held, and when I say cleared, I say the scene has been made safe, and it's been cleared. Right now, we are in the investigative portion of that, collecting evidence, whether that be digital evidence or physical evidence. That is what we are doing right now, and we're also conducting interviews. Obviously, we have several victims that we need to have a conversation with, to ask questions. Also, witnesses. So there's a lot of work ahead in this. This is just the beginning stages, but we are moving as fast as we can.
Can you explain that there was like a 5 minutes between the first shot to the second?
All of that has not been determined just yet. The number of shots, the time in between them, the motive, all of that is still actively being investigated.
We don't know if there were 2 separate scenes. We don't know the answer to that at this point.
I cannot confirm that yet.
And did I miss this? Was this inside or outside Union Station?
This was all outside Union Station. Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Might have judging that somebody who was helping. I just want to make sure I'm right with my math. You said you have 3 people in custody.
We have 3 people that are detained for investigation.
We've been listening to authorities in Kansas City providing the second press update of this afternoon after a shooting near the Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl victory parade outside of Union Station in Kansas City. To summarize the most important aspects of it, and there was some brand new information updating from the first press briefing conducted by authorities. First of all, the gunshot wound number 22 now. It was originally estimated between 10 and 15. 1 person deceased, 8 immediately life-threatening wounds, 7 life-threatening, and 6 minor. Related to that, Kansas City Children's Mercy Hospital has said it is treating 12 patients, 11 of them children, 9, the hospital said, suffered gunshot wounds. The authorities said no motive has been detected, that firearms have been recovered from the scene, and 3 people are now being detained. That is 1 more than from the original first press briefing when they said 2 people were detained, and that in 1 case, fans at the parade assisted police in tackling one of the people now being held in custody in relation to this shooting. The mayor of Kansas City, Quentin Lucas, described himself now as a statistic, someone who is borne witness to a mass shooting in America. He said it now feels as, quote, almost nothing is safe, unquote, in our country. Also, the police chief of Kansas City, Stacey Graves, said many who attended the rally and parade once the shooting began, quote, ran in fear for their lives. That is a summary of the most recent update. One other thing Kansas City authorities said is they are creating a centralized phone number to obtain any information or video from those who were at the scene about this investigation and underlying shooting. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in a minute. You're streaming CBS News.
Hey there, welcome to The Uplift. I thought she was a groom, and I stepped back and I went, oh, you're the queen. She's going to be with me every instant that I'm alive.
I just wanted to see if you'd go to Disneyland with me today.
I look over at him and he's smiling.
I'm going to remember that the rest of my life.
They told us when he was going to be born, he was only going to live for 30 minutes. It's really a miracle that he's with us today.
The Uplift. Stream now on the free CBS News app.
There is no more room in our city.
New York City is receiving record numbers of migrants.
Today, we're going to have more than 500 adults and children come through that door.
Tensions rise as shelters reach max capacity.
We don't have to take care of them.
CBS Reports goes inside a crisis cities and families are facing as they fight to survive.
The United States still has that glimmer of hope for people to come here.
Fighting for a future. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
She's a country music legend, philanthropist, fashion icon, and now rock star.
And I think there's a lot to be said about being comfortable with who you are.
Find out what's next for Dolly Parton when we go person to person.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
That desired farm is a wonderful place to raise children, and it still is.
Promises broken.
Black Americans have been the target of racism and discrimination pretty much from the time they acquired ownership in the land.
Costing black farmers hundreds of billions in generational wealth.
They did everything to make sure we were run off that land.
But communities are uniting to continue the fight.
Collective ownership is powerful.
To keep their land and their dreams alive.
To watch my children play on land that we own means everything.
So land is power.
Most definitely.
40 Acres and a Mule, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
She is a beloved American icon and head of a media empire. But is Oprah Winfrey happy? How do you define happiness?
Yeah, I call it happierness.
Find out when we go person to person.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
It was genocide, a deliberate effort by the United States government to eliminate the food source that was relied upon by Native American tribes.
American bison were slaughtered and Native Americans displaced.
And that's how tribes were subjugated to reservations and our lands were taken.
But now, through conservation efforts at Yellowstone,
Buffalo provided everything that we needed. Now they need help.
a herd grows.
We need to step up and help them.
And a culture is reborn.
When the buffalo return and come back, that's when our tribe will begin to heal.
Yellowstone Bison Revival, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Welcome back to Washington. I'm Major Garrett. We will, I promise, continue to follow the breaking news out of Kansas City, Missouri. Police just informed us that 22 people were shot near the Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl victory parade. If there are any additional updates from Kansas City, I promise you we will go back. But there are other topics to discuss, and I have two great journalists with me here at the table to help me do that, Kadia Goba and Molly Ball. Kadia is a politics reporter. I'll spit that out at Semaphore. Molly is a senior political correspondent at the Wall Street Journal. Kadia, let me start with you. Any reaction that you've detected from lawmakers on Capitol Hill about this afternoon's tragic events?
Yeah, so obviously a very divided Congress. So I don't see any legislative fixes anytime soon. But I did get to speak to Jared Moskowitz, who he's a graduate of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, and as you know, today's the 6-year anniversary, and his comment was sort of like, this only happens in this country, and you can't make this stuff up, you know, an exasperated reaction, as you would imagine. And then you think about, like, again, people are very splintered on this topic. It was just last year when Speaker Johnson just became Speaker, his comments were, you know, this is not about guns, this is, you know, people...
About behavior,
about
it's about mental illness, it's about other things, right. And to the degree there's been any Republican reaction, has it fallen into that category? Are they still sort of assessing the situation and not wanting to, quote unquote, politicize anything?
I haven't seen any thoughts and prayers yet from that side.
Understood. Khadija, also, there was a vote yesterday in the House of Representatives to impeach the Secretary of Homeland Security. It passed narrowly. Had there not been a COVID diagnosis and a canceled flight for 2 Democrats, it would have failed yet again. What does that tell us about the current politics in the House of Representatives?
Well, it definitely says that the majority is extremely slim, and the chances of anything really progressing without Democrats really participating is just very unlikely. Like you said, that vote could have